the Single Family Design Board full board meeting for May 8th, 2023. We will begin the meeting with a roll call, please.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and proceed with roll call. Chair Kalas,
Yes?
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Gerfeidi,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, so the first order of business is always public comment. As always, any member of the public who would like to speak on an issue that is related to the purview of this board, but that is not specifically related to an item that is on the agenda is welcome to do so at this time. Staff, if you could let us know if anybody's put in a speaker slip.
All right, thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, but if you do wish to speak, just a reminder that you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I don't see anyone making a move to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand, and then I will call on you. At this time, I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any general written correspondence. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you very much. So at this time, we would like to take a look at the meeting minutes for the Single Family Design Board of April 24th, 2023, in order to ratify those.
Chair Kalas, we had item 1, an ADU update by staff. Item 2 was 1215 High Ridge Lane, and it was continued indefinitely with comments. Item 3, 1414 Santa Rosa Avenue, received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent with comments. Item 4, 3855 Cayacita, was continued to the staff hearing officer for return to full board with comments. Item 5, 3635 Santa Maria Lane, was continued indefinitely with comments. That concludes the meeting minutes.
Okay. Did anybody have any comments in regards to the meeting minutes? Okay. So would someone care to make a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second that. If we can take a vote, please.
All right, thank you. Chair Kalas,
Yes?
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Gerfeidi,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So the next item is the approval of consent calendar minutes from May 1st, 2023, and also May 8th, earlier today.
May 1st, so item A, 1889 Eucalyptus Hill Road, was continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer with comments. Item B, 900 Los Alturas Road, received project design approval and final approval as submitted. Item C, 2121 Los Tunas Road, received final approval as submitted. Item D, 23 East Padre Street, received project design approval with comments and was continued indefinitely to consent. That concludes the May 1 meeting minutes.
Okay. I believe May 1 was attended by Ms. Anderson, so have you reviewed these, Ms. Anderson, and do they appear to be accurate?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Would you care to make a motion?
Yes, to approve these minutes. Please.
I'll second that motion.
Great. If we could have a roll call, please.
Thank you. Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Gerfeidi,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we'll move on to the May 8th consent minutes. That's from earlier today. And Ms. Gerfeidi was in attendance for that.
Item A, 3508 Madrona Drive, received project design approval with comments. Item B, 952 Alameda Padre Serra, was continued indefinitely with positive comments to the staff hearing officer. Item C, 155 Loma Media Road, was continued indefinitely with comments. Item D, 1712 Anacapa Street, was postponed indefinitely. Item E, 939 Carrillo Road, was also postponed to the May 15th agenda. That concludes the meeting minutes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that. And if we can have a roll call, please.
Chair Claus,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
and Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. So we'll move on to item D under general business. This is general announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Do we have any general announcements by staff?
Chair Claus, just a few announcements. Just a hello to the new board members. I haven't been able to attend a hearing with you just yet, so welcome. And then we've also pushed back our general board discussion and training. It's tentatively scheduled for June 20th. It's a Tuesday. And so Ted will be sending out an email to confirm that you all will be present. So we're hoping for the full board to be here and we can continue on with our training. Also, if the board members could note the items they're stepping down for, I have it for Board Member Sherry, you're stepping down for item 3, and Board Member Graffitti, item 4. Can you confirm?
Yes, I can confirm.
Yes.
Thank you. Lastly, Ellen and Ted, the design review supervisor, will be taking the SFDB improvements to Planning Commission, just an update to them this Thursday. So they will be reviewing all the updates they shared at the Land Development Team Oversight Subcommittee. That meeting happened a couple weeks ago. And they will also be discussing the idea of any appeals being heard by Planning Commission versus City Council, so we can provide an update on that at our next hearing.
And if I may just jump in, that's very specific to SFDB. So this is only for SFDB appeals to route them to the Planning Commission instead of City Council. So that's what, but we just didn't want to provide, just make the suggestion without any context of kind of why we're coming to the Planning Commission. So that's why we're just going to give an update to them as well. So please stay tuned.
Okay, great. Are there any other general announcements by the board members, aside from the 2 items that they need to recuse themselves from, or? Okay. So it looks like we're through general business, and we'll move on to item 1, which is a discussion item, and we're running a little bit ahead, which is great. So this is a general advisory group public service and decorum training, and Ms. Gorman is going to help us out here. And we have the honor of being visited by our mayor today.
Hello.
Welcome, Mayor.
I'm gonna pitch it to. I'm Sarah Gorman. I'm the City Clerk Services Manager, and I'm here with Mayor Randy Rouse and Human Resources Manager Graciela Reynoso. And we'll start with Mr. Mayor.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the committee. I'm glad to see we've got a full committee once again, which is a rather big deal, especially for all the applicants out there. It's more than a little ironic that I'm standing before you right at this moment in history when I'm talking to you about decorum and procedure and giving the public, very firm direction given the shenanigans we pulled in council chambers these last few weeks, but we'll give it our best shot. So council is, obviously you guys are an extension of what we do. And we hear about it on a very regular basis, as you know, from the amount of things that are appealed. Oftentimes our appeals are sometimes neighbor v. neighbor rather than about the actual design of the project itself. There's not much you can do about that. But it is important that the people walk out of here with the confidence that you've taken a rather set of subjective circumstances and made as much objective out of them as possible, so that they have the confidence when they go through with their design that it is the right design. And the appeals, the more confidence they have and the less capriciousness they feel in terms of what this committee does, and the more of the expertise you put into it, really gives them the confidence and will all by itself help to lessen some of those appeals. And it's always great when we get a consensus vote. Certainly not obligated to do that, but if when you get down to the final vote, if you can come up with a 5-0, it's pretty declarative for us and on council. So we don't normally turn those back, but people that come in here to all the discretionary design review boards, and let me just start out by saying, we used to do this on an annual basis years ago, like when Jim Armstrong was still the city administrator, we'd actually have a big workshop on a Saturday and drag everybody into Louise Lowry or whatever, and do all the design, or all the committees all at once. And that was onerous for everybody, including the design review committee. So hopefully we'll just take a little slice of your time today so we can convey what we need, by at the same time not being too distracting or too interrupting, and do too much of interruption for your normal schedule. But when people come into design review commissions, oftentimes they'll come in with kind of the history of either dysfunction, capriciousness, sometimes, as in the case past where we didn't even have a quorum and the thing had to be continued. Thank you once again for serving. We very much appreciate that, and thank you for the new members as well. But it's really important that people feel like they're being served and that they're going to walk out of here with a better project than they came in with because of your help, with your service, and moving forward. Oftentimes, discretionary design review committees sometimes envision themselves as a stop sign, or the clients envision them as a stop sign. That's not really the relationship we want. This is where you should come for help. It's not supposed to be a hurdle you have to cross. And sometimes agents or architects or some of those folks would have something to say, well, I'm going to ask for this and end up with that. And it's really not supposed to be that. What it's supposed to be is the best project possible for the location you're working on. And the things about neighborhood compatibility, design, structure, materials, it's something that we have no expertise in. That's why we have you as our representatives. And your expertise, if it's communicated correctly and confidently, and especially if, once again, if there's a consensus vote, that really tells us a lot. If it comes to us, and we have no expertise in what you do, and oftentimes these last decisions come to us, which doesn't really serve anybody, and it's about 2 hours of our life we never get back again. But they still have the right to do that, and that's fine. And people are concerned about their neighborhoods and the sensitivity of their neighborhoods, which they should be. But once again, that feeling, that sense of customer service, that sense of we want to be part of making your project the very best project it can be for that neighborhood, is really, really important to us. And it's important to them, and it's really why we're here. This has been, from time to time, has been a contentious committee. I don't mean this specific committee, but going back in history. And part of that is a sense of capriciousness, a sense of, yes, you have discretion. Yes, there are subjective standards. But if they seem so subjective and they seem kind of will-o'-the-wisp, like I just don't care for green today, I don't know why. I mean, that's the kind of thing that gets communicated back to us. And now they're in council chambers, which is a place that no project should have to go for either side, because it's a really expensive, very unsatisfying thing to do. We'll probably either try to split the baby or somebody's going to walk away unhappy. And that may be something we can't avoid. But if the confidence in this board going forward is really set, it makes the process a lot better. But once again, the spirit of trying to take a project and just through your talents, making it even a better project. And you may or may not agree with the designer, you may not agree with each other, and that's fine, that's what it's set up to do. But that feeling of professionalism, that feeling of going forward with the confidence that my design was reviewed not by somebody who was in a bad mood that day, but it was designed and it made a better project. And oftentimes people do walk out of these review committees and say, I have a better project now. But it's important that that's our goal. It's important that service is our goal. And we're not just trying to run things through. We do want Santa Barbara to look like Santa Barbara. But it's also important that we make the client feel like they're not here just because it's an obligation. They're not here because it's one of the steps to finally getting their project through, but they're here because they're actually going to have assistance in making sure that everybody around them is going to be happy and impressed when that project finally comes to fruition. So once again, thank you very much for your time and your dedication and your professionalism, and look forward to working with you, and look forward to not seeing any of your projects in front of us is what I really look forward to, but you know how that goes. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. well, I'll stay here. You can stay there. Now, we'll talk a little bit about what Ms. Reynoso and I will be talking through today. We're going to talk about the roles of the advisory groups, AKA boards and commissions. Talk about communication, conduct, and decorum, a little bit about anti-harassment training. We have a half hour booked, although I think we'll be a little bit less than that. Aw, Randy Rouse, he spoke. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. He's asked me not to have that slide up the entire time that he speaks, which is fair enough. Okay, talking about the role of the boards and commissions and advisory groups. They're very important to public entities, and my goodness, Santa Barbara takes its boards and commission structure very seriously. I've worked for other cities that had 4 advisory groups or 10. The one with 10, I was like, ooh, that's a lot. And then I came here. And it's built into the Santa Barbara structure. The charter sets forth several advisory groups, and the city has an intention and follows through with making sure that there is citizen input on the running of the city in terms of appointing persons to advisory boards, receiving public comment on items. It's really critical to making Santa Barbara Santa Barbara. And we're very, very appreciative of your help and assistance in doing that. And so the council designates various decision-making authority and advisory authority to boards and commissions, including SFDB. And each commission has its own defined role and provides guidance within that role. And SFDB's board has a very specific purview and expertise. And as the mayor mentioned, and is really critical, we, as a city, really appreciate and need your guidance within that purview. The persons that are appearing before you with projects really are clients. We're looking for ways to provide them with, as the mayor stated, objective standards that they can run with to make a better project and move forward. We want there to be consistency. We want there to be a straightforward review so that the person can take the project and move forward. All right, next slide. Looking at your roles as advisory group board members, you are representatives of the city. Goodness knows this is a shockingly small town, as comes up, once a month in my life. Oh, you know that person from where? Okay, very good. Good to know. Kind of scary. You are out in the community, and you were appointed to this role in particular because of your role in the community, because of your expertise, because of your relationships. But once you come here and once you come to the David Gephardt room and you're sitting behind this dais, you are acting as a representative of the city. And that comes across in various ways. It comes across, as the mayor said, in acting objectively and not capriciously in making decisions from the dais. It comes in interactions with members of the public and applicants and neighbors who come before the dais. It can be particularly intimidating for persons to come and speak to an advisory board. Sometimes it's less so if it's an architect that comes to the board every couple months, then they're more used to it. If it's a neighbor who's never gone through this process, it's weird and it's different, and it can be intimidating. And the goal is always to treat all of these people appearing before you, whether they are experienced architects or whether they're a neighbor who's never done this, to treat them all fairly and with equity. It can be challenging to hear public comment often. Not often, sometimes, maybe often if it's Tuesdays at 2 o'clock in council chambers. But it is your role as a representative of the city sitting at the dais to keep your composure, listen, pay attention, stick within the structures of the Brown Act, and move forward to the next commenter. And going back to the roles of the boards, commissions, and advisory groups, we're looking to increase participation, various community interests. That's why we want people to come and speak. We want them to send communication. You're there to engage the community and provide advice and expertise in your defined purview. And to remain within that purview. We have part of the, the flip side of the fact that Santa Barbara has so many commissions and advisory groups is that there are so many committees with entirely different purviews. There's a purview of people who provide advice on the living wage ordinance. Ms. Reynoso and I will be speaking to the Civil Service Commission later. There's Water Commission. There are a lot of people with expertise in different categories. So please continue providing your counsel on SFDB jurisdiction, and the other commissions and counsel as necessary will pitch in on the other topics. And conduct. None of this is news. And as I tend to think of it, because I have a 12-year-old daughter, if you think you are acting like my tween daughter when she is hangry, don't do it. Otherwise, be decent and kind to the people in front of you and the people on the board. The expectation is to conduct the city's business in a professional and decorous manner. You want to be a leader for civility and decorum. And as I said, this applies to people sitting before you, people coming to the podium, staff, people in the public if you're interacting as a member of the board. Be welcoming of civil participation and engagement. And, it is so hard for all of us to unplug and pay attention to what's in front of us. I think all of our brains are broken, mine especially, with having a phone with us all the time. But when you're here, pay attention, read the agenda ahead of time, read the agenda packet ahead of time. I know sometimes they can be particularly daunting. Sometimes for council, we have these 200 or 400 page packets. Like, good luck, council. Enjoy your weekend. But read that stuff. Be prepared when you're here. Pay attention. Be respectful of other people's time. So, and that can go in a couple ways up here on the dais. It can mean make sure that you are saying what you need to say. Don't let other people, not let you speak. If you have something to say, have it be said. But also be conscious of allowing other people to speak and having input from the various people on the board that wish to speak on an item. And don't be distracted. My phone's over there. It's cool. I can't touch it, but it's fine. So be focused on the work that's here when you're here. Ms. Reynoso.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. My name is Graciela Reynoso. I'm the Human Resources Manager here at the city. Sorry, thank you. I'm here to talk a little bit about some of the affirmation statements that the city makes in regards to culture and how we maintain a professional and respectful work environment for everybody. So some of the information that you've received either through the application process to be on this advisory group or through orientation, one of those documents is our Excellence in Customer Service Code of Conduct document, which is on the screen here. And again, affirms our belief that we should be proactive and be responsive and courteous and respectful to one another. Like Ms. Gorman mentioned, we're all at the city because we have a certain expertise that we like to practice within. So we should be knowledgeable and solution oriented in that respect and bringing our expertise to the city. So some code of conduct reminders. And again, these are just friendly reminders that we also give to staff when we talk about how to kind of come into the city and work within the framework and culture that we have. Some of the reminders are to address the public and staff in a respectful and patient manner. The golden rule, treat others as you'd like to be treated. Practice active and respectful listening so that we understand what the other party is saying. Monitor your tone of voice and body language. And many studies, if you're in the training world, you'll know many studies show that 80 to 90% of a message that's conveyed is through body language and tone of voice. So it might not necessarily be word choice, it's really how you're projecting that message. Make a genuine effort to listen to divergent viewpoints. I think all of us can attest to the fact that every day is different, and we have to work within, I guess they kind of say, play the card you're dealt that day, and work with a variety of viewpoints. And keep in mind that it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. So maintain our composure. Thank you. Another document that we point to, and staff engages in training on this policy. It's our non-discrimination and harassment policy, and also Resolution 93-134. These are documents that basically articulate that it is illegal to discriminate against anybody or harass someone based on what we call protected categories or protected classes. So those protected categories and classes can be defined as dimensions of our person, such as age or race, gender identity, sexual orientation. Those are items that when we engage in behavior that is targeted because of one of those protected categories, it becomes illegal based on federal and state law. So we are charged with training staff every 2 years and on inception of their employment at the city, and we'd like to just kind of provide that. Again, another affirmation of the city's commitment to equality in the conduct of the city's business. And so the old term bullying, you've probably heard of that and the detrimental effects bullying can have on especially children, but really anybody. We are now calling it abusive conduct for kind of the professional world. So we want to avoid abusive conduct. And again, these are reminders that we give to staff as well. Abusive conduct can be defined as, or examples of it would be yelling or belittling, or again, that tone of voice. So speaking in a condescending tone of voice to somebody with the intent of belittling them. Because the effects of abusive conduct are that somebody may withdraw from the process. So as an organization, these are some of the ideals that we like to speak about for the type of culture that we want to create and maintain. Thank you. Back to you.
Speaking to the chair and or the vice chair, or those of you who may be a chair in the future. The chair sets a welcoming tone to staff and public before the board. You're responsible for the order of and conducting the meeting in a fair and efficient manner. Just noting that next point that you can call a short recess if you need to. It's just something to keep in your back pocket, that if a meeting starts to get particularly hot and it feels like it's not being run efficiently, either in terms of public input or interactions on the board, it's always fine to stop and take a 10-minute recess. That people can stop, take a break, drink some water, get a breath. It can really be an excellent way to kind of reset folks' tone. So I always commend that to you. We do it sometimes in council, and it generally tends to work. I'm a fan of it. So when things are hard up here, you can just think of that beautiful, relaxing picture that city clerk posted. But you're going to conduct yourself as a representative of the city, being courteous and welcoming of others' opinion. So that is essentially our presentation. And Ms. Kokinda, additionally, if there's anything else you'd like to add, you can take your seat and I can.
Thank you, Ellen Kokinda, Design Review Supervisor. I think, why don't, I do have a couple comments, but I'd rather you open it up to public comment first, and then we can go into it with discussion, just to point on a couple of things that the mayor said, too.
Okay, so at this time, we'll open up public comment to those in the audience or who are online that might want to speak to this particular agenda item.
All right, thank you, Chair Kloss. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. Just as a reminder, if anyone wishes to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. So I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand, and then I will call on you. At this time, I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you very much. So I'll turn it back to Ms.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Kinda.
Well, I just want to, again, thank Ms. Reynoso and Ms. Gorman and Mr. Mayor for coming today. And, you know, every board, every design review board or advisory board is a little bit different. And I think I say this ad nauseum, but SFDB is the hardest board to serve on, in my opinion, because you've got a lot of people who've never participated in that process. And I just want you all to understand collectively as a board that staff are here to support you, and that oftentimes we have to be a broken record in repeating what is the SFDB's purview. What is your purview? At every single meeting, almost for every project, when you have different members of the public coming in and out, sometimes there are things in your purview, sometimes they're not in your purview that day. So you might hear things, and sometimes you might know, and you can respond to that as a board or a chair or vice chair or any member. But sometimes, you know, staff are here to always, you can punt things over to us and say, can you help members of the public and the board understand? We can always weigh in on that so that it's crystal clear. Or again, we've at least made it part of the record that, you know, we're establishing, here's what it is. You have a hard job, you're looking at the aesthetics, but somebody might be talking about parking and construction noise, and that's just not what your people are here to, that you're here to give feedback on. So just know that, again, staff are here to support you with that. I also just want to say that I really appreciate, Ms. Gorman, your comment about the pause, because we do get a lot of people who don't understand decorum, who've never participated in a public meeting and start shouting out during deliberation. And so, you know, we try to kind of bring that down. And sometimes, you know, we need to see some course corrections, and it helps if, you know, staff have your back in order to support that decorum. And then lastly, I'm so thrilled with this particular group. I'm really thrilled that we have a full board of women in particular. But no, it's really exciting to see.
She's really thrilled.
And, you know, and I just want to also, but I'm super conscious of what the demand is for SFDB and its current level of projects. That is something through our SFDB process improvements. We want to reduce the number of projects that come through these hearings. But in the meantime, until those amendments are, until things have been adopted by City Council, you still have a large number of projects coming through. And so your time is extremely important, and efficient reviews are especially important. So I think just being conscious of spending time, we try to time things out on the agenda based on what we think it's going to be. It's not a perfect science, as you know, and I really appreciate Chair Klaus's leadership in trying to maintain that, and just being conscious for your other board members so no one gets burned out either, because I really want you all to be happy. But thank you so much, and let us know if there's any other questions.
I have one question in regards to the pause. So it's easy to take a pause once something has been turned over to us and we're deliberating, and maybe we need to take a pause to regroup. It's another thing to take a pause, for example, in the middle of public comment, which is typically when things get very heated. And I would hate for the perception on a particular public speaker's part to be negative if we were to take a pause immediately following their comment. And so I don't know if there's any recommendations perhaps from the mayor, who's old hat at this, for me as a chairperson or for the board at large in that regard.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And it's really important that the chair and the whole committee, you run decorum within the entire room besides just what's on the board itself. So at any given time, you can call for order. You can also, we've done it from time to time, take a brief recess. Take 5 minutes and walk outside or go in the other room. But whatever goes on out here is under your control. And if it gets so bad, you've got staff here to bring in some help. Doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And because these can be really emotional, these are personal property, those kind of things, it's really important that you guys maintain your level of zen or whatever you want to call it while and be on the high road. You should be the people that aren't emotional. Let people play out their emotions out there and try the best to contain how you behave. But if it gets out of hand here, this is your chamber, and as the chair, it's your call on how people behave, whether they're speaking loudly, laughing, snickering, or just having a conversation that's disruptive up here. You've got to ask for complete order in your chamber, or you got to stop the procedure. So.
And if I may add to that, to the chair and boards, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that, it's something that I will direct staff to just be aware of too. It seems it could be odd to stop public comment right in the middle. There are certain situations that would call for that and do a recess. I don't necessarily think I've seen any that rise to that level. However, I do wish I had advised you in certain moments to have taken a recess between applicant questions and public comments. So in those moments, I think it's perfectly fine to say, wow, we've heard a lot of things. Let's just, let's take 5 minutes and we're going to come back, regroup. And then same thing, I would advise staff, staff can always advise you. Staff can say, Ms. Chair, would you like to do a 5-minute recess? Or we might recommend a 5-minute recess. What do you think? It's ultimately your call as chair or whoever's chairing the meeting if you're not here. But I think that we can kind of play off one another. And there are certain instances that I think rather than jumping right into review of project after we've heard from 30 people, then I think that can help bring the tension back down and everybody's cool, and then we're back at it. And I've seen that be an effective strategy.
Thank you.
Can I ask another question? Similar topic, but I know we all take written and public comment very seriously. Sometimes we do get public comment relating to agenda items that it's not necessarily completely out of our purview, like complaining about construction, but it might be a misinterpretation of a guideline as a requirement. And I know that's led to frustration in a lot of recent appeals. Are there any tips either from the mayor or from you around how to navigate public comments that aren't necessarily in our purview to maybe help the perception that we are listening and taking it seriously?
Well, are you talking about general public comment as opposed to comments about the specific item?
Specific items, but maybe we'll hear a lot in writing or verbally around something's not following a requirement, but that necessarily isn't.
Right, well, staff can help you out with that, and they should interject, hopefully to help you out in those situations. We always have an attorney at our meetings for that very reason. But if it gets off of your specific purview, it could actually damage the proceedings or lead to that kind of appeal that you didn't intend to have in the first place. So it's important when you feel like it might be going that direction, to just go, Holly, what do you? Are we still in bounds here, or the chair can just say, we're really slipping into an area that we don't do. The beep, beep, beep noise on the back of the truck, that's a bummer, but, but that's
Okay.
not really what we're here to talk about today.
Okay.
So, but it's really important to kind of keep that rein as tight as you can,
Yeah.
because if it gets loose, it's going to really be hard to make your final deliberations seem solid and cogent.
And if I may add that, as I'm often in the role of staff hearing officer, so I'm sitting on that side and I'm a decision maker, and I'm reading the written comment or I'm hearing things, and I will respond to them. I'll say, it might depend on how confident you are. When it's one of your guidelines and someone's treating it as a requirement, like this doesn't meet this, and you say, well, I just want to, I read so-and-so's comment, or I wanted to respond to the construction issue, but I understand, that's not within our purview, and the city has municipal code that every developer, every applicant has to follow through, and that has to meet, and that's addressed during building permit application. If you're not familiar with those codes or what it is, that's when you set up staff and say, staff, we received public comment about this. I know that's not in our purview, but can you please explain to the member of the public what they should look out for, what they should be aware of how the city addresses this in other arenas. And I think those are two tools. But I do like speaking things out loud because it is a courtesy. People take time to write in, and you want to, you do read all of these. It takes a lot of work, and it takes work for them. So just trying to meet them in the middle and point them into that, how it's, where it's best in what forum.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
there any other questions from the board? Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now that we have our marching orders, we will move on to our first agendized item. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but I think we're allowed to be within 15 minutes of that. Is that right? Okay. So we would like to ask the applicants for item 2, 691 North Hope Avenue, to come forward. This item is agendized for final approval, and I will read into the record the project description while everybody's getting settled here. This is a proposal for a 6-lot subdivision consisting of a new public road, sidewalk, parkway, fencing, and other infrastructure improvements. The project received approval of an annexation, a zoning map amendment, and general plan amendment from the Santa Barbara County Local Agency Formation Commission, otherwise known as LAFCO, and the City Council, and approval of a tentative subdivision map and street frontage modification from the Planning Commission. Final approval is requested. The project was last reviewed on August 30th, 2021. So before we proceed with this, I would like to ask the members of the board if they have reviewed meeting minutes, videos, or drawings from the last review of this project, because I think I'm the only one on the board that has any history on this. So, Ms. Lewis, did you review past information?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Garfeiti?
Yes.
And Ms. Sherry? Great. Okay. And then the last thing I would like to do is ask clarification from staff before we proceed. This is for the subdivision itself. This is not, as I understand reading the description here, approval of any of the actual residences. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, great, thank you very much. So if the applicant can go ahead and proceed, you have 15 minutes to present.
Chair Klas, to the applicant, sorry to interrupt. If we could acknowledge the previous meeting minutes, I can pull them up here.
Okay, yeah, that would be great if you want to pull those up. And really the most efficient way for us to do this is for you to just go down through the previous meeting minutes, address those, and address any changes that have been made to your drawings since our last review. That would be great.
I'll just read into the record the first two. It looks like the others were just findings made here. So comment 1, the board encourages an agreement to be reached between owners of Penn Place and applicants in regards to maintaining or maintenance of the 30-inch line that runs under Penn Place and the associated inlet that sits between 3836 and 3838 Penn Place. 2, transportation staff and the applicant shall look at the distance back from Hope Avenue to the beginning of the 6-foot-high fence and consider whether it would be prudent to reduce that height for a further distance to increase visibility for pedestrians. And then again, the rest were just the required findings that were made.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll start your time now. If you can introduce yourselves and the project, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Tony Tomasello. I'm a principal planner with RRM Design Group. I'm joined here today by 2 of my colleagues, Rachel Rayner, a fellow land use planner, assisting me with the project, and we have Mike Hamilton, who is also with RRM and is the civil engineer on the project. I'm going to go ahead and start just by quickly addressing the 2 previous comments that were made from the minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to talk through kind of the overall grading, drainage design, and then we can probably turn it over for any questions from there. So the first question was related to the storm drain in Penn Place. So for those that may not have all the history with the project, this site was previously in the county. It's being annexed into the city. That has occurred and is complete. The properties immediately to the north are within the county. However, this Penn Place is a private road, so it's owned and maintained by the all of the owners along there. There is an existing storm drain channel that comes down kind of between these two properties. It hits a head wall here, and then there is, we believe, an underground pipe that goes under PEM and used to traverse through the site down to existing inlets on the south side and continue making its way downhill from there. This is in coordination with Public Works for the city. We will be need to expose and examine that pipe, remove any clogging and damage. It's uncertain what its condition is going to be in, so if it's so bad that it needs to be replaced, it will be. But essentially the idea is to kind of pick up the storm drain at that point, route it through our site to continue on, and install sufficient manholes and access points where that can be sufficiently maintained within essentially what's going to be the public right-of-way of this new public road. The second comment was related to the kind of intersection with Hope Avenue and trying to allow for sufficient visibility along the existing sidewalk. So currently the property line is kind of right at the back of sidewalk, which doesn't include any parkway. I'm going to go to a different plan view. What was that? Which sheet is that? Up on top. Oh, yeah, there we go.
That's a demo, but to the right, there's kind of a blow up.
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, that is helpful. So currently the property line is sort of right here at the back of the existing sidewalk, and that continues on to our property side. We'll be dedicating 7 additional feet to the public right-of-way and installing on along our frontage a parkway between the sidewalk and the curb. And then that will continue kind of across our frontage. We'll be also continuing that across the Penn Place private driveway and then reconnecting to the existing sidewalk north of Penn Place. So there's already about 7 feet just to the back of sidewalk from where it currently was today. And then in addition to that, we've got the 10 feet back. We have a privacy fence between the new private road and the existing Penn Place, and basically 10 feet back from the new property line will be 3.5 feet tall. So it should be about 17 feet back from where it currently is today. There are some improvements kind of on the north side of PEM that somewhat obstruct visibility. I think in discussing with our civil engineer and the transportation engineer, didn't seem like pulling that fence back any further was going to significantly increase visibility northward because of those improvements that we don't have control over. So we think that these improvements will be fine. There's space here for pedestrians to kind of pause before they would kind of start crossing over the new driveways. And there'll be a stop sign, I believe, on our new public road.
Yeah.
And with that, I'll hand it over to Mike to talk a little more globally about the grading and drainage.
Thanks. It's as far as grading and drainage goes, this site is a little tricky, like Tony had mentioned. We have drainage coming from off-site from the north. It currently goes into a culvert that may or may not be functioning correctly, likely not, and we intend to fix that. The pads, that's as far as off-site drainage goes. The rest of the site, this plan is intended to grade out pads for future homes. So the intent is to give us some flat pad spaces and then adequately drain the rest of the site. The roadway, Oak Terrace roadway, will be contained within itself as far as drainage goes. It'll be captured towards the end in a cul-de-sac. There will be some stormwater quality, some treatment, some infiltration there. The bulk of the pads are draining to the back side, which in this case is the south side. There's a drainage swale and easement that will capture this runoff and move it towards the center where you see there's a new inlet. Yeah, perfect. Right there, and it's going to connect to the existing storm drain, 30-inch storm drain that goes to the south through the neighboring property. Eventually, these lots will be developed with homes, and there will be some tweaks as far as there will be some stormwater quality measures that go in place, but the drainage scheme will remain the same, where we'll have swales, drainage will be captured in the back, and ultimately make its way to that 30-inch storm drain.
In terms of other project changes, there weren't a ton from the previous entitlement, more kind of engineering details. We have widened this swale, or kind of pushed up this swale to account for a couple of existing oaks, so that the bottom of that swale will kind of go around that on its way to this inlet. In terms of landscaping, really this plan is just showing the public improvement landscaping. So we have landscape sheets in the set, but there'll be 3 jacarandas along Hope Avenue, and then jacarandas spaced kind of at intervals along the new parkway, along the new public road. And those will need to be, I believe, reviewed and approved by the Street Tree Advisory Committee before they're installed.
Yes, that's correct.
And with that, I think we'll turn it over, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, great, thank you. So at this time, I wanted to acknowledge we did receive some written public correspondence in regards to this item. And I'm going to let staff offer up the opportunity for anybody in the audience or online to make public comment on this item.
All right, thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. So just as a reminder, if you wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. And seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. So if you wish to speak on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand and I will call on you. I do see one hand raised on Zoom right now. So that's going to be Brian Costa. I'm going to allow you to speak right now, and then you'll have 2 minutes to make your public comment.
Mr. Costa, if you're there, please feel free to speak up.
It shows that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you, so it might have something to do with your sound. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next hand raised, and then we'll come back to you. So the next one is Nancy Swanson. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak right now, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Ms. Swanson, if you can hear me out there, if you could attempt to speak. I'm trying to make sure we're not having an audio difficulty on our issue on our side as well.
Okay. We'll try one more. There is a third hand raised, and then it's probably an issue on our end. So, Nikki Costa, you would be next. I'm going to unmute you, and you can go ahead and try. Close. Okay, yeah. We're going to go ahead and close virtual public comment, and we'll come back. I'm going to speak to IT and see if we can work that out. In the meantime, we did receive 2 letters from Brian and Nikki Costa and Andrew Cox, and I'll turn it back over to you while I figure that out with IT.
Okay, so it's a little bit awkward. I'd like to ask staff's recommendation. Can we move on to deliberations, or do we need to take a recess while staff troubleshoots this in order to retain order here?
Chair Colas, we are running, on schedule, so we can take a 5-minute break while we contact IT. That seems appropriate.
Okay, I'd like to do that. I'd prefer to get the public comment before we begin deliberation. So we'll take a 5-minute recess, and we'll return at 2 minutes after 4, roughly there. reconvene the Single Family Design Board meeting for May 8th, 2023, and we were awaiting public comment from, I believe, 3 individuals for our second item on the agenda, 691 North Hope Avenue. Staff, if we can try again.
Yep, so sorry about the technical issues. We'll go ahead and start with Brian Costa first. So I'm going to try to unmute you right now, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Mr. Costa, are you out there? Perhaps if you could, I think there's an opportunity where you can raise your hand on Zoom. If you can perhaps click that icon to indicate that you're hearing me for staff.
He's hearing you.
Okay, so you can hear me, but we are not hearing you for some reason. I feel like we're playing some sort of game here, but I'm making an effort to have you heard. If you can hear me, and if you have clicked your unmute button already, can you once again click the raise your hand icon?
Yeah, he's unmuted, and I can see it in the settings too that he's unmuted.
Okay, so for some reason we are having a technical difficulty and we cannot hear you. I'm trying to think how else we can facilitate this. If there's an opportunity for them to call in, could we do that?
We can try, yeah. Yes. Let me.
Is there a number that we could have them call that's a public number here?
Just a note too, if you can hear us, sometimes if you're logged in twice, you'd need to unmute yourself on your cell phone. There's also another way you can see on the screen here. There's an Alt plus the A. Hold those down at the same time, or if you have a Mac, it may be different. Pressing *6 will also unmute yourself. That happens sometimes if you're logged in twice. Perhaps one device isn't unmuted yet.
Okay, so do we want to try a phone call? Or?
I think it'd be great if we could make that happen.
Okay. So if you can hear me, Brian, the phone number is 560-7507. Again, that's 560-7507.
That would be a local number, so it would be area code 805.
805.
So we're going to give Mr. Costa a moment to try to call in, and staff is going to try to facilitate the public comment by putting him on speakerphone and a microphone next to him.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put, yes, I can. I'm just going to put you on speaker and then hold you up to the microphone just a moment. Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready. It is on. Yeah, it shows that it's on. I can hear you. Sorry, just a moment. No, it's coming through here.
We have to hang up the handset in order for the speaker to engage.
Hopefully it won't hang up.
Okay, just to give you a heads up, I'm going to try to hang up this phone to put it on speaker, but it may hang up and you may have to call back. I'm so sorry. Just a moment. Oh.
So when he calls back, if we could just, I think answering that way, then he'll be projecting through there.
So, Mr. Costa, if you can call back, please. Staff attempted to put you on speakerphone and we've lost you. But if you call back, they're going to try to engage speakerphone initially.
Hello again. Got disconnected there.
Great.
Yes, go ahead. You'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for working through those issues with me. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Costa. My wife and I own 3814 Connie Way. And to the new board members, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to get up to speed on this project. Just for some more background, the neighbors, which include about 40 different folks from 8 different streets nearby, have raised concerns about this project for a while now, since 2019. And we attended board meetings, we've sent in letters, we've met with RM and on several occasions, but here we are again faced with, unfortunately, many of the same questions and concerns about this design. And these issues include the following. First, runoff and privacy. The grading plan shows 4 feet of dirt being added to lot 1, making it substantially higher than all the other surrounding properties. This negative grading will negatively impact my property in 2 ways, reducing privacy and directing water towards our home. And I would appreciate time to consult a geotechnical engineer. Trees. There's an existing coast live oak on the northern property line with lot 2. This tree is not included in the site plan. And the proposed bioswale goes directly through about 50% of its root zone, which will likely kill it. So we would request that this tree is added and the bioswale is redesigned at that location. Parking. There's no on-street parking on Oak Terrace. Garages and driveways are not sufficient. Connie Way is regularly full, and we all have 2-car garages and driveways. So I would request that Oak Terrace needs dedicated on-street parking. Children's safety. The current design has 2 roads next to each other, as was shown, which is adjacent to a crosswalk frequented by both kindergartners and 6th graders. Given that children that age do not consistently pause to look for traffic, this traffic pattern and the addition of large construction vehicles is concerning and needs to be resolved using more than just a stop sign. So given that the neighbors still have unresolved questions and concerns, we would respectfully ask the board delay approving this design, give us some more time to review these really complex sets of plans, and also to help us connect with the appropriate city staff for concerns that may be outside the board's purview. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Since this appears to be working, I would like to recommend that staff just continue the process and, again, provide the number for the next person who's got their hand raised.
Okay, so the next person's going to be Nancy Swanson. So that phone number again is 805-560-7507. So going a little bit out of order here, this is actually a different person that had their hand raised. So this is Nancy Costa, so we'll go ahead and start with that, and then we'll move to Nancy Swanson.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Am I coming through?
Yes, we can.
Okay, lovely. Sorry in advance, I'm in the Santa Barbara airport, but this is actually Nikki Costa. I'm Brian's wife. Just wanted to say a few quick things. First of all, welcome to the board members. As a neighbor providing public comment, it was actually very helpful to hear some of the operating guidelines earlier in this session, and we very much appreciate the board's help navigating the process for design approvals. My first request is for the board to provide information about where parking concerns and traffic should be addressed. As we heard today, it might not be an SFDB. However, during earlier planning stages, the discussions seemed kind of incomplete without information about the houses, the quantities, the sizes of the driveways, and the size of the road. So if the board could provide that, we'd really appreciate it. My second request is to see if the board will continue to send the orange mailers prior to the meeting. We only received notice about this meeting on Thursday, and so as a result, I'm calling on behalf of a number of neighbors that are either on vacation in Italy or otherwise unavailable. As another note, we would also encourage RRM to reach out proactively when plans are available so that the neighbors don't continue to be kind of caught off guard here. And then the last thing, overall, we requested the board allow time for the neighbors to review the grading plan and drainage plan. As Brian had said, we've been attending these meetings for 4 years, and rushing through with this decision now, and the neighbors only having 3 days to review is not being a good steward of the overall community. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much, and yes, also very excited that we have an all-female board member group. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Costa.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our final public comment. So that's going to be Nancy Swanson. If you could call in, the number again is 805-560-7507. Okay, we have you here, so just 2 minutes to speak.
Hi. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes,
my
we can
name is Nancy
definitely
Swanson,
hear you.
and I live at 3822 Connie Way, and I back up to lots 3 and 4 of the new development. My concern is, I was okay before I saw these plans, and now my concern is that my garage and office back up right on my property line to the property, and if they're going to bring in fill dirt and raise the lot heights of the development, I'm fearful that I'm going to flood. Right now, I have windows in the garage and in the office space that are 1 to 2 feet off the ground as it sits right now. So my request would be that that they would keep the natural grade of the property rather than filling with another 5 foot of dirt and raising those lots, which I'm already losing privacy, and I've got a 6 foot fence back there, which would give me a 1 foot, clearance from my fence if they put in the 5 feet fill. So I'm requesting the board deny final approval of the plans as submitted and instead require revisions to mitigate or eliminate the negative impacts of my property. Thank you very much. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson.
So I did mention that was the last one, but in the meantime, we had someone else raise their hand. So we're going to have one more. That's going to be Dan Shea. If you could call in, the number is 805-560-7. Okay, we have you here now on the phone. You'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Okay, very good. First of all, I got no notification of this meeting whatsoever, and I'm on the list to be notified if anything is happening at this property. I just found out by talking to a neighbor who said there's a meeting this afternoon. So I don't know how that happened, but this shouldn't happen. People should be notified that are on the notification list. And I agree with my neighbors that this grading plan, this is after 4 years of planning, they want to regrade it? That doesn't make any sense. If the grading's on the table, so should the parking situation. The parking situation of no street parking is just ridiculous. And that needs to be changed back to the planning department or whoever can revise that to at least get a one-side street parking. Excuse me. There's no other streets in this neighborhood that are like that. They all have at least one-side street parking. So that needs to be revisited. Like I said, I agree with my neighbors that, these last-minute changes of regrading are just, they're not proper. And if that's on the table, everything should be on the table. Okay? I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, that is the final speaker for public comment. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Great. Can you remind me of the name of the last speaker? I'm sorry. I didn't
Yes, that was Dan Shea.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will close public comment and we will open this up to the board for questions of the applicant. Is there anybody who would like to start?
I'll go first. I was wondering if you could go ahead and explain the swale a little bit more, understanding the neighborhood comments and how that drainage works given the fill and how it will divert water from their properties.
Sure. The existing topography of the site it's pretty steep. So we're basically where you see those pad grades, you're pretty much right for the most part meeting existing grade. The problem is that the grade falls off in a couple different directions, towards the south and then towards the west. So the grade is actually being met up against the Connie Way residence. We're meeting grade all along. And then from that point, here, actually, I'm going to switch I'm going to go to a different sheet. Just, Tony, can you? Yeah. I want to get to that section that shows the utilities, the flat one. No, keep going, sorry. That one. So if you zoom in on section B right there, that's kind of what's going on. The sections that are shown on the previous sheet, I know there was concerns, they're magnified by a scale of 10. And so it looks really steep and it looks really outrageous, but that's only to help the contractor understand what's going on. The reality is the swale will be pretty minimal and look much like this up against the Connie Way neighbor's house. Does that help? Or?
Thank you. I think that's a great explanation and a great visual for the neighbors to get to look at. The next one, I was wondering for the city to talk about the purview of parking or not.
So city staff has looked at the parking and actually you mean that no on-street parking? So that's gone through planning commission review already, city council review. It was discussed many times. Transportation planning staff recommended no parking in this new road. One reason could be that in the future there's a potential to merge those two driveways together. That's why it's kind of built the way it is now. Maybe in the future it would be widened and there could be on-street parking, but there's no guarantee. So for now, no on-street parking is recommended.
Actually, last question. Can we confirm that mailers went out to the neighbors?
No, we don't send public notices out for the final.
Oh,
We send
okay.
them for the initial concept review and then for project design approval, they're
Okay.
sent out. We don't send out notices.
Okay.
Though, could speak to agendas. Because
Yes, Chair Claus, through you to Board Member Lewis, correct? Okay, that's correct. We only notice for concept, project design approval, and then the discretionary land use decision hearing. So we'll confirm that that last speaker is in fact added to the interested parties list, because those folks should receive an email with the agenda and instructions for participating.
Okay, anybody else? Questions?
Yeah, I had, these were a couple of comments that were in the previous motion. An agreement, encouraging agreement between the owners of Penn Place with regards to maintaining the 30-inch line. So did you talk about that? I missed it.
Yeah, I touched on that.
So.
I think it's the issue of the maintenance that we're trying to dial in on here, just to be clear.
Oh, the maintenance. So what we've done, because it seems to be clear that this storm drain is failing or is not functioning properly. So we've installed a manhole right here, just on our side of the property where we can access it. So if there is future problems, that's what we can do to help clean it out if it becomes full with debris. So that would help considerably, in my opinion.
Thank you. I had one more question. It was number 2, that the transportation staff and the applicant look at the distance back from Hope Avenue to the 6-foot fence and consider whether it would be prudent to reduce the height for a further distance to increase visibility. I missed that too in your presentation.
So you can see the curb is pulled back here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think. The bull nose is pulled back to here. The fence stops at that point. There is some obstructions right around this area that are off
Can
our.
you zoom in on that a little bit more?
Sure. Maybe go to the. Or yeah, we can just go. Not. not shown on this plan, but there's some obstructions like right here. And when we looked at it, as Tony had mentioned, this fence is set pretty far back. The cars will pull up to this point here
Got it.
and see. But again, the obstruction that we're kind of dealing with that's critical is right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Graffiti or Ms. Anderson, any questions?
No, my questions were answered. Thank you.
Anderson?
Nope.
Okay. I have a couple questions. I'm the old one on the board now, so I remember when the room was full. Okay, so I just want to be abundantly clear on your responses here. Is there or is there not, okay, well, first of all, the question, what I heard you say that you were proposing to replace what appeared to be the failing culvert that is south of the head wall. Or I'm going to call it the culvert, the underground drainage line.
Yes.
And that is part of your project, to replace that
If
apparently failing
Can you zoom out?
item.
Sorry. I'll describe. So what we've done is we know it's failing. We don't know where. We think the pipe starts here and at one point connected all the way to the basin here. Okay, so at some point, either on the project property or on Penn Place, it's failing. So if it is on Penn Place, we are proposing to fix it. If the pipe is good and then the failure is somewhere over here, then we're just going to connect to the existing pipe at the manhole. And then the manhole will provide an opportunity to maintain it and keep it clean going across Penn Place.
So at that point, it would surface across your cul-de-sac and be picked up in your new inlet, or?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're connecting with a storm drain. So the existing storm drain went something like this, and we don't know exactly. We're connecting here,
It's the
and
new
then
red
we're
line.
this orange line right here, and then wrapping it around this lot.
Okay, so you are replacing the portion that's to the north of your property line if it is found to be failing.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I guess I'll call it the inlet box that sits within the swale. I just want to ask the question. I'm assuming that and whatever line downstream from it is sized to take all flow from these, I'll call it Oak Terrace, as well as the cul-de-sac, existing flow from the culvert on the north that comes from Penn Place, and all surface drainage from the lots that are proposed as part of this development.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And then, in regards to the fence issue, I know we're kind of beating dead horse here, but I want to be very abundantly clear about some of these issues because they've been serious concerns of the neighbors. You have not changed the location where the fence transitions from 42 inches to 6 feet because you've determined that there would be no benefit in doing that because of other obstructions. Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct, and that's the conversations that you had with Derek Bailey and Transportation Engineering.
Okay. I have a question for staff. So this was heard at Planning Commission. It was approved at that level. Were the neighbors notified or noticed at that time of the Planning Commission hearing? And do we know if any neighbors spoke at that meeting in regards to their concerns for a lack of off-street parking?
The Planning Commission hearing was a noticed hearing. The notices went out to 300 feet radius and interested parties. I believe, and it's just going by memory, that there was a discussion about the no on-street parking.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. There was a comment by one of the public speakers about an existing oak tree associated with Lot 2 that's not shown on the plans. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, I understand it's off-site, so it wouldn't have been picked up in our ALTA survey. We do have requirements to have an arborist present during any grading activities. We have a contract in place, so they will be on-site and reviewing any grading work going on adjacent to off-site trees.
And do you have a diagram that shows where the setback would be on the southerly property line for Lot 2?
The setback?
Mm-hmm. The building setback or development setback for that?
I mean, we have a 10-foot utility easement along the entire southern property line. So no closer than that. I think otherwise you have a 6-foot rear setback.
I think it's 6 feet.
Yeah, so no building is going to get any closer than 10 feet. And very light, I mean, those are the rear yards, so I don't know what is proposed for the design, but
Okay.
probably further.
And then there's been a couple comments by the public speakers about regrading this project or an increase in, I'll call it fill. Have there been any changes in the general approach to grading since this board, not Planning Commission, but this board has seen your plans?
I can definitely say the grading approach has stayed the same. We may have tweaked some of the pad elevations. It wouldn't have been that much just because we can't. There's really not much flexibility. I think maybe the concern might be we show the pads, we basically maximize the pads because we don't know what size house or what, not yet anyway. And so that may be a concern. Or that may look different, but for the most part, it hasn't changed since the tentative map approval.
So you say that may look different. What do you mean by that?
Well, and I think part of the issue is on those sections. These sections here, these sections that are exaggerated by 10, it makes it look like the pad's way up in the air. It's really not that drastic when you think about, yes, there is 3 to 4 feet difference, but that largely has to do with the existing topography. So on one side of the lot, we're actually cutting the pad, and then on the other side, we're filling. It's just making it flat.
Okay. And just for clarification's sake, when you say that these sections are magnified by tenfold, what I think you're saying, and to be clear to the audience, is that your scale in a vertical direction is 10 times the scale in a horizontal direction. Is that correct?
Yes, very well said.
Okay. Can you speak to the grade difference? I think it was Ms. Swanson had voiced concerns over a change in elevation from what would be finished grade for, I think, lots 3 and 4 and her parcel at 3822 Connie Way.
I believe this is her residence.
Yeah,
And she had mentioned the office in the back, which is shown there. Like I said, where these contours come in are exactly where the existing contours are. So we're not changing grade here. We're dropping about, 6 inches to a foot for the swale, and then it jumps up a little bit as you go up to the pad.
So you're meeting grade and you are sloping downwards away from her parcel.
We're sloping away from her parcel. The inlet is right there, so it is, I understand her concern completely, but we think we've got a solution that fixes any drainage problems that exist now.
Okay. I think those are all the questions I have. So we'll turn it over to the board for discussions or comments. Would anybody like to dive in?
Mine's easy. Mine's easy. I'll do mine first. I think the project's ready for final approval, but I did want to say one thing about the neighbors, and that is that I think that some of the concerns that are valid that they have are not our purview, such as future privacy between a future development on one of the lots versus the existing houses and the new houses being higher. And then hopefully that fences can be, good fences make good neighbors. And it would be nice if that were incorporated in the future lots. But again, as you've said, you don't know where the houses are going to be or how close they're going to be to the property lines for those neighbors right there on the screen that face one another. So that's an issue that I want all the neighbors to know that it'll, be addressed when the individual properties come to design review. And then the other issue is there was another big concern about safety in the street and the visibility, and then the kids not looking where they're going. And unfortunately, that's not our purview either. But I understand that a new subdivision all being accessed from one driveway off of North Hope is going to be a change that that's going to have to be dealt with as far as increased in vehicular circulation. So that's it.
Thank you. Are there any other comments that anybody would like to make?
I agree with the general comments made, and I also think that the grading that's been done will prevent any flooding and has gone through the appropriate channels and seems appropriate for these lots.
Ms. Graffiti, Ms. Anderson?
Yeah, I would be in support of final approval. Agree with Board Member Sherry and Board Member Lewis, and some of the comments I think around grading is perception or maybe confusion, and I would just encourage the applicants to continue dialogue if possible with neighbors, so that everyone's on the same page of how they're reading plans. Yeah.
I agree with all of the comments made from the board.
Okay. My questions have been addressed, and I think that I agree with Ms. Sherry that a lot of this is outside of our purview, but I'm trying to make sure that neighbors' concerns are to the greatest degree possible addressed, which is the reason for some of the questions. And I think you've done that for the most part. You've at least looked at those things. I would also be comfortable with moving this forward with a final approval, but I would like to see a condition placed on the approval related to the Coast Live Oak adjacent to Lot 2, and that an arborist report and protection of that oak be required unless an arborist weighed in and otherwise noted that that was failing for some reason. So that would be a condition placed upon the subdivision at large, but specifically on Lot 2, if everybody's comfortable with that. I know we've seen some preliminary plans for these, and there is a lot of backyard work. There are a lot of backyard improvements, pools in many cases, and I think it's important that the root zone on that tree be recognized and protected. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for final approval with the condition that the oak tree near Lot 2 be added, even though it's off-site, in addition to the condition that the arborist report be required as part of this particular submittal.
A second.
Great, we have,
Can I get a little bit of clarity on what specifically is being requested?
okay, well, I'll share an anecdotal story with you about a project that I was just working on. I too had a survey done and it didn't pick up an oak tree on another property. And now we're about to demo. We're about to go in and excavate. And guess what? There's this big, beautiful specimen oak whose root zone is right in the area where we're going to do that. So now what happens? Now everybody's in a quagmire. So not only do we want to save the tree, but it would have been nice to get ahead of that. So what I'm trying to do, or what the board is trying to do, is provide you with a vehicle and direction to ensure that that happens ahead of any proposal for development on that parcel. So the goal here is to direct you to engage an arborist and include their mitigation measures or recommendations in any development related to that parcel,
Okay. I mean,
with the goal of protecting the tree if it's in good health.
okay. I guess the existing conditions on the project do somewhat of that. We do have an arborist that has been contracted and that will do on-site monitoring around it, every tree that is anticipated to remain. So if
But
this-
those are the trees that are directly on,
There's a couple on the
on the
north side
subject
that
parcel,
are
right?
technically off-site. They're even closer to the property line. Those ones did come up. Those were already going to be an area that we need them to pay close attention to. Happy to add this one to the list of kind of put that on their radar. In terms of a arborist report, I think we're a little beyond that point in time. So I just request that, we kind of add it to that monitoring during construction rather than asking for a separate report.
so let me ask staff a question here then. So if we're trying to place a condition on Lot 2, how do we go about doing that as part of this approval today and this subdivision?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, is Lot 2 coming back? Because you've had some of the homes come before you.
I don't.
I don't
can't
think
remember
any of
which
them have
one.
gotten final approval yet,
None
though.
have gotten final. What?
I could
Go ahead.
amend the motion to state that the condition of final approval is that the oak tree in question that we're talking about is included in your arborist report, and something about the critical root zone of that particular tree as part of the subdivision approval and construction. That's kind of what I thought I said. But it doesn't need to be a separate new arborist report. You could just go to the arborist report that you have now and have them amend the report to include that tree. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think it's important to find out how the tree is doing now, because we don't want to impact something that's already been impacted, or we don't know how it looks now. So I think looking at it now, prior to the project, and then making sure you protect it.
Agreed,
So-
that the arborist should review the health of that tree prior to any grading activities or clearing and grubbing. Okay. So we have a motion on the table for final approval with the condition. Ms. Sherry, do you want to re-summarize that for staff's clarity? I just want to make sure we're all clear on what we're asking.
Sure. The motion would be final approval with the condition that the oak tree on Lot 2,
It's to the south of Lot 2.
to the south of Lot 2, be included in the arborist report, and the health of the tree addressed in the report
Prior to
super
any.
eloquent.
Yeah, prior to any on-site activities occurring.
Prior to construction.
Yeah. Okay, and the seconder of the motion, is that acceptable to the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, so again, we have a motion on the table for final approval with the condition noted. Can we take roll call, please?
Thank you. Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 3. We'll ask the applicants to step forward while 2 of our members take a quick personal break.
Well, no, she steps down. She doesn't need to read the sole proprietor.
Oh, so what is-
Coming over here.
Oh, she's not?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Somebody from my office is.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. But thanks for. Although I don't see our photo picture. Oh, I might have combined them at the very end. Oh yeah, there's 34 pages. Yeah, so they're probably, because just for the board's benefit, when they're posted online, they can see the photos then. Okay. I will make sure I know which order everything is. Okay. I think I did site photos and then neighbor photos. It says material first and then, okay, it's all posted. Thank you.
Okay, so we're just waiting for 2 of our board members to return quickly. And Ms. Sherry has stepped down in preparation for this item. So while we're waiting for the other board members to return, I will go ahead and read the project description into the record. This is item 3 on our agenda today, 485 Braemar Ranch Lane. This is a proposal for additions to an existing one-story, 3,072 square foot single-unit residence consisting of a 110 square foot entry, an 86 square foot kitchen addition, a new 737 square foot partial second story, and a 160 square foot deck. An existing two-car attached garage and 1-car carport will remain. The accessory structure and ADU noted on the plans is under a separate permit and not a part of the SFDB purview. The proposed total of 5,172 square feet of development on a 60,757 square foot lot is 100% of the maximum guideline floor-to-lot area ratio. That is a guideline floor-to-lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings and hillside design district and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. So Ms. Sherry has stepped down, and if you would please introduce yourself and your project.
Hi, so I'm Lauren Ballantyne, for those who haven't met yet. I'm an architect and project manager for Sherry and Associates Architects, and I will be taking you through our project at 485 Braemar Ranch Lane. Thank you, Leslie, or Chair Kalas, sorry, for describing the project. I'll kind of skip through all of the statistics again, save you guys that, and walk you through the neighborhood first. Braemar Ranch Lane is in the Campanile neighborhood, and we can see it's a fairly large lot, 60,757 square feet. And most of the lots in the neighborhood are large, and they are set, the structures are set back from the street, and so there's not really a lot of street visibility for most of the residences. Our project is no exception to that. There's really limited visibility from the street. Only a portion of the carport is visible, and sorry, the order of this is a little different, so let me just see if I can, this is what you can see from the street there. The surrounding neighborhood consists of a variety of architectural styles. The project parcel is currently developed with a contemporary style, single-story, 3-bedroom, 3-bath home. This is the attached 2-car garage and the entry. And I'll just kind of quickly scroll through the different elevations so you can see the development as stands. And I'll head to the site plan. So our proposal is for a 933 square foot addition. About 196 square feet will be on the primary level, and that's shown in these hatches here. And that's just to enlarge the kitchen area and create an enlarged entry and stair to the second story. And the second level addition, if I zoom in here, is shown in this bold dashed line, and that's located on the north west side of the property. And I just, careful consideration was given to the location of this addition, both vertically and horizontally. We can see that we are already close to the setback line on the west side. We have an existing pool on the south side. To the north, we have a garage. There's actually a retaining wall here and a grade change going up to the accessory structure. And so we didn't really want to increase the development going north so as to preserve a lot of the landscape and not have to reconfigure the existing parking and vehicular way. And to the east side, we also have the setback restriction here. So that's primarily why we choose to go up with the addition. We did take special consideration as well to preserve the views of the neighbor to the north, as well as consider the privacy to the neighbors on the east and west sides. And if I go back to this key plan for the neighborhood, I can show you a little bit better what we're discussing. Before I discuss too much in depth the additional considerations we took to locating the addition, I wanted to mention that we did have our client reach out to the neighbor to the north and offer to erect story poles and take photos from the vantage point of their property so that we could overlay our renderings and show them what the development would look like from their parcel. That offer was declined. However, the public comment that was released today show that they are interested in the story poles, and we are not requesting a waiver from that requirement. We're happy to do that for them. Additionally, as we further develop this concept, we want to provide a site section showing the topography and also the relative elevation from their parcel line to our second story and the accessory structure that is existing. So now I'll head back to the site plan here. So one of the main considerations was the viewpoint from the northerly neighbor, as I discussed. And so the location of our addition sits directly behind, from their vantage point, the accessory structure that is already on the lot. This lot slopes down towards the south. So the existing roof line of this accessory structure is already much higher than the existing roof line of the existing development. And we'll get a comparison for the proposed development. The elevations show that the existing parapet over the master suite is about 13 feet high, and due to an already lower ceiling height on this side of the building, our development will only have about a 6.5-foot increase over the total, over the overall height that's existing. Let's see. We also chose to set back the upper level from the entryway and the rear yard just to help the perceived overall height from the property, so not just the actual overall height, but we want it to be diminutive and not really apparent while you're on the parcel as well. And I'd like to just kind of show you the renderings of our proposal. So this would be the addition as you drive in. And here we have the stair tower. We have a nice transition in roof heights as well, so it doesn't just, step back dramatically. It helps to create a little bit of a better transition. Here's an enlarged viewpoint of that. This is the view looking directly south, and you can see that this is set back as well. The existing parapet height, as I mentioned before, is 13 feet here, and it's lower at the garage already. So let's see. This is the rear view. The ceiling height in the in the living room, is very low. It's 8 feet now as compared to the 10 feet in the master suite. So we're proposing to increase the ceiling just in that area. That is not where our upper level addition sits, so that's still going to be over the lower ceiling height. And we'll be raising the parapet to meet the existing parapet along the master suite. So the overall height of the living space will not increase at all. And this is an enlarged view of the south elevation. You can also note here that our window placements are towards the south, both for the views that are incredible as well as privacy from the neighbors. We have limited windows on the north elevation, which are, I guess I can go back up here. Are seen here. These are the only new windows that are proposed to look out towards the north. And then on our site plan, you can see that that the adjacent neighbor to the west is already beyond the location of the addition, so they're not like looking over into the home of the adjacent neighbor there. Whereas if we had positioned this addition on the east side, it would be kind of a privacy issue for the neighbor to the east. So really, this is the best location for the second level addition. And then in terms of materials and styling, our client really liked contemporary, just wanted a more updated design. They really like a variety of materials. And if I can find the color materials board, we are proposing a mix of some natural wood, raw concrete, taking the existing stucco, smoothing it out and painting it, and then some anodized aluminum doors and windows. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you very much. For the record, the applicant has 5 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. So at this time, we will conclude the applicant's presentation, and we will ask anybody in the public, either in the room or online, who would like to speak to the project to do so. And I'll turn that over to staff for them to organize that.
Chair Kowals, it looks like we have a speaker slip here. Thomas Foley? Okay. If you want to identify where you reside, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak, and I'll put the time up for you in just a moment.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and panel members. My name is Thomas Foley. My wife Patricia and I live for 30 years at 515 Braemar Ranch Lane, which is directly north of the applicant's residence. The neighborhood is in the Hillside Design District, and most of the hillside homes on typically Braemar Ranch Lane, you don't see your neighbor down below. That's just the way that the subdivision was designed, which is very nice. The plans call for expanding the first floor of the existing single-family residence, and we have no issue with that. The plans call for adding a new second-story addition of, as noted, 737 square feet with a 160-foot deck. The plans also show raising the ceiling below, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding it, raising the ceiling in the living area on the first floor below the new second-story addition. I reviewed the plans online, but I couldn't tell, so if the architect could maybe clarify for me, are they raising the ceiling below the new second-story addition?
Please don't respond directly. Well, we'll make sure that question's answered when it comes to the board's time to question.
All right. With the subject of story poles, there was an offer to erect one story pole. We wanted more than one story pole. I would point out that according to the Community Development's Visual Aids and Story Pole publication on page 2, it says when there's an FAR of, it exceeds 85% in the Hillside Design District, then story poles are required. As noted in the staff's report, the FAR on this project is 100%. So we are requesting story poles, and it's helpful if they put the little pink like ribbons that flutter around so you can actually see on the story poles. We would also like to know if there's going to be any trees that are removed or going to be planted that would impact our view.
Mr. Foley, your time is up. Are you close to being complete? I can give you another minute if that would be helpful.
30 seconds. I did check the little box on the speaker's form. We would like to get future notices as this project moves forward.
Okay, so you would like to be added as an interested party for the
Yes,
project?
I did check the little box on that. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other speakers?
All right, as of now, I don't have any other speaker slips, so we'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. We did have some issues with this, but we will try again. So if you wish to speak on Zoom, please raise your hand, and then I will call on you. At this time, I don't see any hands raised, but we did receive 2 letters from Janet McGinnis and Tom Foley. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you very much. And you did a great job powering through the issues, by the way.
Do you mind if I ask a question to staff, Chair Kalas?
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's going to matter based on what the applicant has mentioned about the story poles, but just a clarifying question for myself. If it's a guideline FAR, does the same rule about 85% of max FAR apply to the story pole?
Chair Kalas, through you to Board Member Graffiti, thanks for bringing this up. I was going to clarify as well. So the visual aids, those come into play when a project exceeds 85% of the required floor to lot area ratio. The key word there being required, as this lot is over 15,000 square feet, it's a guideline floor to lot area ratio. So it would be at the applicant team's discretion whether or not they'd like to put up the story poles, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So at this time, we will open up questions, further questions from the board. Is there anybody that would like to start? Ms. Lewis, you seem like you're always great coming out of the gates. I love it.
If I don't get it out, I'll forget. So first off, if you could answer and clarify the concern about raising the ceiling. I think you touched on it a little bit, but that'd be great.
Absolutely. I'm still hot. So let's see if I can. This is our proposed lower level, and our upper level addition is here shown at grid line G. And you can see grid line, but it's set back over the garage portion. And this is the new entryway. So the stairs, like the existing living room wall is here, and so the stairs are beyond that. So all of this is the addition. This is over the existing garage, and then this comes out over the kitchen. So the portion of the raised ceiling is in this area, and that is not, we'll be having like a beam in the kitchen ceiling will still be lower, just to maintain the.
Is the roof staying the same, or the parapet at that area?
So the parapet along the north and east side of the master suite that wraps all the way around to here is at 13 feet. The existing parapet in the front drops down lower because there's a lower ceiling. It's, I think, 11 now, which we can see in the elevations here. It's actually like raised up here and it drops down. So our proposal, see, it's raised here and it drops down at the front beyond. So our proposal would just be to match that parapet line to make it 13 feet, not exceed that. And then we would keep the parapet, basically as small as possible on the addition to make sure the overall height stays as low as possible.
And then I know a landscape plan was not needed for conceptual, but are there additional trees and other large infrastructure add-in?
No, we're actually not proposing to make any changes to the existing landscape. It's already well landscaped, and because of our design, the addition is already in a hardscape area, both at the rear and at the front. There may be a small planter here. We'll want to add some planting around the new stair, but that's minimal, so definitely no trees.
Any more questions, Ms. Lewis? Okay, Ms. Graffitti, any other questions?
I believe it was in the plan, but if you could just confirm the highest point of the second story element, the ridge from, I guess it would be finished grade. Do we usually measure it finished grade or finished floor? I think finished grade to the top. I think it was around 21 feet, but I just want to be clear on that.
So we're showing it at 19.6 above. So because of the slope of the property, the finished grade changes. It is already much higher at this side of the structure than it is at the south side. And so let's see if I can get an exact overall. Looks like 23 feet from the lowest point to the highest. So that's not the side that the neighbors to the north will be viewing, but from the south you would.
Okay.
Also, I just want to mention, because we're still at the very conceptual level, we don't have these exact spot elevations provided from a surveyor. So as we continue to develop it, the site section will be able to comment on that, but I mean, it's not going to be dramatically different than what we're showing here.
Okay, that's all the questions for me. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, any questions?
Yes. Can you just go over the second floor? There are no dimensions on your second floor. I know it's 737, I guess, and the 160 deck, but
as far as the deck goes?
size-wise, yeah, just kind of walk us through that. And then the potential use is another bedroom, or the owners want an additional bedroom with a view.
Yeah, the owners don't plan on utilizing this as a bedroom space for a view. They have 2 young children and they work from home, and so this is really going to be a play space for the children, and an extra bedroom for if family comes to stay in town, things of that nature. So that's the primary use of this space, is just kind of a flex space for them to have a play space. The deck was really an opportunity that we saw as a really nice feature. Our client was, happier with a smaller deck, but just the logistics of providing a different floor finish and where would the railing go, it seemed like the best option to just maximize the roof area above for continuity. And but this is not this is not going to be habitable all the time. It's not their plan to move their suite there. They're going to be remodeling the primary suite to make that more accommodating for them.
So that whole deck between grid line 6, 7, and I can't see the opposite direction, but that's your 160. It looks a little bit larger to me. I'm just trying to And then you have a glass rail above on the
Glass
edge of
rail,
that?
yeah.
Okay. Entire
We're
roof
proposing
deck.
one of those, not anything with a metal stanchion, but the glass that sits into the parapet and
Mm-hmm.
has just like a small gap between the panels, so seamless glass really. Just, we don't want that to be anything that catches anyone's eye.
Right. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Neighbors, communication, yes. So the garage, existing windows and doors, are you replacing all of the existing windows and doors, including the garage? And the ADU's out of our purview, but can you speak to?
Sure, all of the windows in the spaces that are not being remodeled will probably just be replaced within the existing openings so that they match. Because
Mhm.
right now you can see from the photos that they're like a white vinyl material, and so it
Right.
wouldn't be appropriate to have them not match. But we are not proposing new door and windows. We're not proposing to enlarge those openings, and that includes the garage. The garage door will be replaced within the existing opening, just to update the style.
Okay, good. So I thought you had existing garage door, but yeah. So did you consider no parapets possibly on that upper floor? Just as an idea to keep, heights down?
For roof drainage, I think that it's important that we have something that's small. We didn't want to obviously provide a gable roof or a sloped roof of any sort, so we wanted a flat roof, and we don't plan on having, are you talking about the second floor in particular? Or?
Well, any of the residents could be a way to,
So I think, I can't speak for the neighbors, but I can imagine that their concerns are that their views are not impacted. And so since this parapet, the parapet on the east side is going to be maintained, the middle portion here that we're raising to meet is not going to be further impacting the views, and provides a really nice transition so we don't jump from a really low parapet to, the second story. We really want this to be minimized, the impact of the second story, and one way to do that is to have the height changes step up gradually. And so we also just thought it would look undesirable to have a parapet be higher, drop lower, and then a stair tower and come up again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just have a couple questions, and we don't have a survey, so I'm going to ask you, I guess, to do your best to guesstimate. So right now and I'm going to ask from finished floor as opposed to finished grade. So based on the drawings, from finished floor, where did I have this? Finished floor, I'm trying to understand the relationship of the existing residence and the proposed addition to the accessory structure that exists on site already, because I think that would give everybody in the room kind of a gauge of heights. So I'm trying to understand, like, finished floor elevation right now of the existing residence to the top, you're saying is roughly 13 feet to the top of parapet. And the existing accessory structure and its plate height or overall height, do you have a sense of what that would be roughly?
I think it's around the same.
Okay, but then grade, I'm assuming, slopes up to the north from the primary residence.
Right, so it sits much higher. That's something that the site section I was mentioning, I think will really help illustrate and help all of us to visualize better. However, I will say that the corner of this accessory structure to our garage wall is about 57 feet. And so if you can imagine at a 13% average slope, over the course of 57 feet, it is quite a big difference, which means that the accessory structure does sit, a good amount higher. I'm curious myself, and
I mean, would you guess that's a 5-foot grade change
I think it's
there, maybe
more.
6 feet,
I
8
think it's
feet?
more because at this hardscape drops already, about 4 feet to the adjacent finished grade. So, and that's, just the distance of 8 feet or whatever this is of this deck. So if we were to maintain that, and there's a retaining wall here, this is dropped much lower. So I would venture to say that the top of roof of the accessory structure is probably going to be pretty close to the top of roof of our new development. I don't imagine we'll be exceeding it much, if at all.
Okay. And then perhaps, could you pull up the aerial view that you had, the satellite photo?
Let's see.
Okay. Could you try to zoom in as much as possible? I'm trying to get a sense of what the property line vegetation consists of, because it looks like that photo taken down the driveway shows some pretty significant vegetation along the north property line.
Right. I think our site plan mentions the height of that, and thank you for bringing that up because I neglected to discuss that in my presentation. But here we have a hedge that runs almost the entire property line, and it's, let's see, we show it as, I guess, 8-foot maximum. I think it's probably around that, so that helps to shield the view of the existing house. And I think we could incorporate that into our line of sight diagram as well, so we can show how that landscaping really helps.
Okay. I know this is early on, but have you given any thought conceptually to what type of roofing you will be using for the flat roof and or the color of it? Are you planning a Sarnafil type membrane roofing or a built-up roof or in a white, in a gray?
We have not given extensive thought to that. I would imagine that we would do like the PVC type membrane, just because that's really, it's good for waterproofing, and
pretty
water is not our
bulletproof.
friend.
Okay. You may want to give some consideration to what color that would be, given some of the concerns from the northerly neighbor. If I could see the south elevation real quickly. Okay. I was looking at the relationship between the roof deck guardrail and the window that's in the proposed bedroom. Yeah.
Right.
So that's something that you might want to, I'm sure you'll be working that out as
I
you
know,
move
and-
forward. So, yeah.
And have considered, and that's one of the benefits to having no stanchions and having the glazing
hold
just
it
be
off.
thin, and exactly.
Okay. Would your client still be amenable to doing story polls? It sounds like there was either a miscommunication or a misunderstanding of what they might be amenable to providing
Right.
versus.
So erecting, story poles that stay in place is a little bit of a feat, especially on top of the existing residence. It needs to be structurally sound. So what our initial offer was, and what we would like to do, is we have, a pole that we put at each point and take the photos of, so that we can map virtually where the top of roof is at each of the corners, and then we do an overlay with our rendering. And so it gives a really good visual of exactly how tall it will be in comparison to the existing surrounding neighborhood. Sometimes the story poles, when they're there and they're just the poles and the flags, you still see through them, and it's hard to visualize what the actual impact will be. So we feel like our method provides a little bit of a true understanding of what the impact will be. If we, are not granted permission onto another's parcel to take pictures from their vantage point, we could do that from our, the corner or very edge of our own property. And I think that maybe that would be something that could be very helpful for the board as well as the neighbors, and would be something that would be preferable to, having the permanent poles that stay at, or the temporary, several week-long pole structure that sits on top of the roof.
Okay. All right, those are my only questions. Thank you. Does anybody have any comments, or would anybody like to share any thoughts? Oh, go for it. Sorry, Ms.
I
Lewis.
think I've heard consensus here that a site section would be beneficial, showing the hedge between the north neighbors as well. And I think story poles, and even potentially if it's a shorter window of time, at least an invitation to the neighbors, a notice of when that will be so that they can view them, and for the board, if they're able to go out and see them, I think would be beneficial. For general comments, I think given the limited visibility of the project from the street, it's staying the same. I think the materiality looks nice, and will be nice to see some more detail in the next review. And I definitely think it's an improvement to the existing structure that is there. And I do agree about showing the roof colors in the material palette as well.
Ms. Graffiti?
Sure. So I agree that I think it's going to be a general enhancement of the current home and in the appearance of the neighborhood. I can, of course, appreciate public comment around trying to preserve private view. I would say that's not the purview of our board. And so what I'm really struggling with the story poles is it's not a required FAR. The second story element is minimal and kind of to the side of the home, and just the way that it's set back, and even the ridge line. Our general recommended guideline maximum is 25. It could even be to 30 feet, and this just seems well below that. So for me personally, I don't require or need the story poles. I think that would be going above and beyond. I would also like to see materials, obviously, as the project progresses, and including the concrete driveway. I wasn't sure if that was a recommended change or not, based on the renderings. And that's it for me.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I agree with the comments. I would definitely add the requirement for a survey with site section to, justify to the neighbors above as well as ourselves what you're proposing. And we believe you, of course, with that the second floor is probably the same height as the ADU detached above. But to have that justified for everybody would be what we need. And definitely, yes, it's an improvement. It's great that the homeowners are improving their property. Helps everybody in that area. There's a lot of activity in that area after driving through the neighborhood. I was originally concerned about the increased FAR. Just generally, it's discouraged to be, larger. But I think given to that neighborhood and the size of the lot, that it's not a concern to me anymore after your presentation. Let's see. And hope, yes, that you might consider green roof and/or solar, and I know that'll be coming. Thank you.
Okay, so, yeah, I generally agree with most of the comments that have been made. I don't think there's going to be a significant impact for the northerly neighbors, but I think we need to provide information so that they can be assured of that. I think that's important. And so while Ms. Grafiti is correct that private views are not the purview of this board, I think it would be the neighborly thing to do to try to figure out a way to address those concerns. And I don't think it has to be an entire set of story poles. I'm thinking it's some sort of hybrid, like maybe it's the four corners polled with a flag on each corner. And yes, an invitation to the neighbor to observe those and chat about those. I think some collaboration between your client and the neighbors to the north, Mr. and Mrs. Foley. Perhaps they could take some photos when those poles are up. That might provide an opportunity for you to actually create a 3D model overlaid over those photos for them, much like you're planning on doing anyhow. I do think site sections are important, and specifically that would be in a north-south direction, and I think it would be helpful to have those cut in two locations. One would be through the primary residence going north, cutting through the property line where the hedge is, and the other one would be further west where you would be cutting through, I believe it would be the two-story volume of the proposed addition as well as the existing accessory structure. So that would be my thought on that. I agree. I would like to see roof colors. I think those are important because it's a very exposed lot. Many of the lots up there are very exposed, and I'd be concerned about reflection. And I know it's early on right now, but I would want to see any proposed changes to the landscape or hardscape that's part of the project. And I do think we're going to need to have a survey. I don't think you're going to be able to get away without it, just in terms of being able to cut the site sections and everything. So those are my comments. I generally think the massing feels nice. I agree with you that, stepping up the parapet in the one area helps to break down that massing, especially from a pedestrian standpoint as you approach the home. You had a nice rendering, and it might be nice, if it's possible, to at least, and it's probably outside of the view, but if there's a way to create a wider angle perspective where you could see that approach to the house with the accessory structure off to the side, that might be helpful also for us to understand the massing a little bit better. I think the color palette is nice, relatively neutral. You can see part of the house. You get glimpses of the existing house from the street. Very small glimpses of it. And it's a relatively buff color right now, I think. So the degree to which the white might be a softer white. I know everybody likes a really pure white right now, but I would advocate for that if at all possible. So we're asked to just make comments. We're not actually...
Chair Collas, board members, yes, if you can provide, a summary of the comments you've heard today to whoever the motion maker is, specifically focusing on size, bulk, and scale, neighborhood compatibility, appropriateness, and then specifically those items you'd like to see the applicant return with, the additional materials and such.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion? Otherwise, I'm happy to do it to move it along. I notice we're running behind a little bit. We're okay? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that the project be continued back to the full board, and that we would like the applicant to, that generally speaking, the board is in agreement that the size, bulk and scale of the project at this point appear to be acceptable. We would like to see, in order to support that opinion or position, we would like to see 2 site sections running in a north-south direction, one through the one-story volume and stairwell, the living room volume and the stairwell, in a north-south direction, and including the northerly property line. The second site section would be through the westerly mass, which is the second-story mass or second-story volume, and the accessory structure, including the northerly property line. We would like to request that the applicants cooperate with the northerly neighbor and that the northerly neighbor cooperate with the applicants in order to, and to place 4 story poles at each corner of the proposed second 2-story masses with flags at the top of the poles, and that the northerly neighbor and the board be advised as to when those will be put in place. That any landscape changes and proposed landscape be included in future submittals. That the materials board include proposed roof coverings and their color. And that future submittals include surveyed elevations of existing grades and proposed finished floors and top of parapets. That's the motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Can we take roll call, please?
Thank you. Chair Kalas?
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti?
Yes.
Board Member Lewis?
Yes.
Board Member Sherry? Oh, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in today. Okay, we'd like to move on to item 4. This is 2501 Medcliff Road. If Ms. Sherry is outdoors, I would ask that she return. And at this time, Ms. Graffitti is going to step down.
I'm going to be part of the applicant team, so I don't know if I need to read.
Okay. So I will read the project into the record, and then Ms. Graffitti is going to read a required statement. This is a project located at 2501 Medcliff Road. It's a proposal to demolish the existing 1-story, 970-square-foot residence and 230-square-foot one-car garage and construct a 2-story, 3,970-square-foot single-unit residence, a 785-square-foot 100% below-grade basement, and a 586-square-foot garage attached to the residence by a breezeway. The project also includes an on-site guest parking space and a pool and spa. 2 oak trees are to be removed and 3 36-inch box trees replaced as replacements are proposed. The proposed total of 4,556 square feet on a 24,580 square foot lot is 96% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. The project site is located in the Hillside Design District in the appealable jurisdiction of the Coastal Zone. Planning Commission approved a coastal development permit for the project on April 6th of this year. Project design approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings, Hillside Design District and slope plot findings, and grading findings are required. The project was last reviewed on October 24th of 22. I'll ask Ms. Graffitti to read in her statement.
Okay. The State Fair Political Practices Act, FPPC Regulation 18702.4B5, states that an official may appear before a design or architectural review committee of which he or she is a member to present, explain architectural or engineering drawings which the official has prepared for a client. In this case, myself as the client. Insert word. Katie Graffiti is a sole practitioner and is using this exception, understanding certain limits regarding advocating on behalf of herself as the client.
Okay, so Ms. Graffiti is going to step down now, and we're going to welcome Ms. Sherry back. And we will ask the applicants to introduce themselves, and they will have 15 minutes to present the project.
Great, thank
Chair Colas, sorry to interrupt the applicant, but we can also pull up the previous meeting minutes. Start there.
Yes, we will do that. Okay. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself while they're pulling up the minutes, and then we'll go through those and ask you to just address those and or any other changes that have been made to the project since we last saw it.
Great. Trish Allen with SEPS.
Will Gray with Gray & Gray Architects.
Katie Graffiti, owner, and I'll also be helping with landscape as our landscape designer. Couldn't be here today.
Okay, so.
Want us to, we can just start if you want.
Yeah, so if you can just go through the motion and the items requested last and or any other changes that have been made to the plans while you go through the presentation, that would be helpful.
Sure. I just wanted to make a quick comment before Will gets into some of the details. So as the description states, since we saw you last, some of you, we went off to the Planning Commission because this property is located in the coastal zone. It required a coastal development permit. So the Planning Commission reviewed this, I guess it was about a month ago, on April 6th and approved it unanimously. With that approval, they make findings necessary for the coastal development permit, which include neighborhood compatibility. And they really also focus on the protection of oak trees. As you may recall, we do have a couple removals. We have some replacement trees of a substantial size, and that is the same as what this board saw when we were before you in October. Is there anything else that you wanted me to say? So with that, I think Will can go over, not much is, it's just, it's further detailed, that's what we're presenting to you today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Again, Will Gray. I'm the architect for the project. And let's see, in preparation for today's project design review, we've just further detailed the set. And with sections, architectural details, doors and windows, things like that. So for today, I'd like to just move briefly through what we've added. And let's see, so to start with, we updated the cover rendering with the more up-to-date landscape plan, namely London plane trees on either side of the front door, also with olive trees masking the guest parking. Additionally, we revised the existing fence with a simple 3-rail fence and entry gate to mimic that same design. Very simple, but this, I think, gives a better feeling of what the project, how it'll appear from Medcliff, a little better than what we had before. We did detail the entry gate a little further at a 1/4 inch, and I'll zoom in on that. Again, it's a 3-rail fence off to the right, and the entry, the driveway gate picks up that 3-rail design very simply. There's a fence on the private road. There's an existing fence that we're picking up the same look and feeling of, and I can zoom in on that really quickly. For you. It's a very pretty existing split rail fence, And so we're going to be picking up that same feeling for the fence and the driveway along Medcliff. Additionally, we looked at the color scheme, the color palette and material palette for the project, and it's basically stayed the same from the previous submittal, with our antique white and off-white, a warmer white, a dark gray standing seam roof, and dark oil rub bronze doors and windows. With the one change we made is from limestone, we're proposing Santa Barbara sandstone with a nice grout joint for the chimneys and any other stonework on the building. Let me zoom out. And just for reference, we included the previous elevations below in black and white. That was, these elevations were from when we initially submitted I believe it was last August. We've looked at the building in section, and these are the initial section cuts through not only the building but also the site. The site is very flat. It slopes practically 2 to 3% to the southwest, so it's not very dramatic. There's not much happening there. The site section, or the sections of the building, basically tell us that what we are anticipating is 12 feet from floor to floor, but within the floor system, the plate height is going to be about 10 feet for the first floor. There's going to be about 2 feet for the structural systems and the mechanical systems. So to recap, the first floor will be, the plate height will be 10 feet. And then on the second floor, our plates vary from 7 to 8 feet depending on the massing. We added exterior detailing. The first detail here is the typical eave and fascia gutter detail, very simple with exposed rafters. The next few details are for the standing seam roofs. We have a detail for the exterior siding, 10-inch T&G painted siding with a V-groove. Typical handrail guardrail for the second floor balconies. We also have a chimney cap with our stone below, and flashing details for our decks and stairway. Lastly, we looked at the doors and window detail, simple casing around both the doors and windows that will provide nice depth for the door and window, and as well as protection from the elements. And that is about where we are. Landscape?
No major changes with landscape. We showed in this rendering the 2 London plane trees. We did switch out to sycamore trees that are kind of bookending the pool for fruitless olive trees. And then I will just say, in the current plan here, it is depicting some, I think it's like low boxwood hedging on the fence line near the garage and towards the front of the property, and that's not accurate. We're not proposing hedging there. There's a very mature oak grove, and we're proposing oaks on the fence line, and in the front, we're proposing probably shrubs or maybe like a bay laurel, a low water hedge. And then in general, again, I know the renderings, it's really hard to depict like very accurate landscaping. Outside of the changes I mentioned, everything should be accurate in this plant list, but really going for a lot of native plants, a lot of low water plants. We do like lush looking versus a desert looking style, but want to, use as many kind of Santa Barbara native plants as possible to get there. And I think we also added vines to the renderings, but that was part of the previous plan.
I think that's it.
Okay, great. For the record, you have approximately 7 minutes left if you need it. So I have one question before we go to public comment. And since I think only two of us have seen this project before. I just need to ask the two new board members if they have reviewed the last set of meeting minutes, videos, drawings.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Sherry? Okay, great. Okay, so at this time, we'll close the applicant's presentation, and we'll ask for any public comments.
All right, thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. So just as a reminder, if anyone wishes to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips. And seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. So if you wish to speak on Zoom, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and then I will call on you. At this time, we don't have any hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Kalas.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I saw the minutes on the screen at one point. Did you go over those and I missed it? Or
No, we had asked the applicant to do that, so. Muted.
It's the same fabulous project. I mean, the comments are very positive as we went off to the Planning Commission. Number 1, 2, and 3 sound like the board was in agreement and appreciative. Number 4, there were 2 board members. I guess we didn't have 100% consensus when we were here last. 2 board members were in disagreement with the size in terms of the immediate neighborhood, and 2 board members were in favor. We have stayed the course with the same project.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Ms. Sherry?
Nope, thank you.
Ms. Lewis, any questions? Ms. Anderson?
Yes. So, Holly, for the coastal development permit and neighborhood compatibility, can you address what they're looking at?
Chair Kalas, through you to Board Member Anderson, I'm not the assigned case planner on this one, so just to better answer your question, I will punt it to the applicant team for this one.
Yeah, well, you were watching, but we were all there. That is one of the findings. That's neighborhood compatibility is a finding for the coastal development permit. There was, I guess, a discussion, I would say, or some questions about the comments from the SFDB. There was a commissioner that asked, gosh, I'm sorry, he's a new commissioner and I'm not remembering his name. Don, I can look, Don DeLuccio. And so he's a new commissioner, and so he was asking for clarification on the process, the FAR. He wanted to really understand FAR requirement versus guideline, which I know we talk about a lot. And so we just, I think really staff fielded those questions and explained what the board feedback was. And it was, I think we set a record in terms of the time elapsed at the Planning Commission. It was a very quick review of the project. There were questions about the fencing and the gate, and very positive comments. Katie, please add.
Yeah, I'll just add, there was a
with-
site visit as well with members from the Planning Commission to the project site. And yeah, there were questions related to the FAR. I think we also shared around kind of the 20 closest homes, and there's a home kind of adjacent that's well over 100% required FAR as well. But I think that's it.
Yeah, I think they were satisfied and no concerns, essentially.
Okay, can you go to your streetscape and the lots then, since we're on that subject of FAR? and scale and massing of your development. Okay. Thank you. I'm just looking at its size in comparison to neighbors on the street, and it's definitely larger, but that's a comment that I will hold. Landscaping, if we're working with scale of house, did you consider or have you considered maturity of trees that you're bringing in to, yes, help with the scale?
Feel free. Can you zoom that so we can see a little bit more? We're trying to bring in as mature as possible, especially with like a London plane tree and that grand look, and just for privacy and beauty. But I think they're all proposed at a fairly mature box size. But I think if you scroll up, should have the plants planned. Oh,
was
maybe
it,
it's,
40
there we go. 48-inch boxes for some. I think the olive trees around the guest parking were slightly smaller than the others, but 72-inch boxes for bear with me here, for the London plane tree, 72-inch boxes. For, I think, the jacarandas, it was 60-inch boxes. Fruitless olive on the south of the property, 60-inch boxes. And then the Coast Live oaks are 36 boxes. We're also notably adding 2 additional oaks to the arborist plan, the holm oaks in a mature 48-inch box. But open to including requirements or recommendations on box sizes for the trees.
And that is why we wanted to point out the rendering update on the cover showing the landscape and how it softened the building and framed the entry and helped it.
True, but that's probably what? Katie, you probably know better, maybe 15, 20 years out where they're in full maturity to, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, going back, are you specifically talking about the which trees or which areas in the front of the house, or?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to
Yes.
go to the cover shot? Well, I mean, a 72-inch box is very mature. I don't know offhand what the actual size of the tree is. I mean, maximum growth, probably 15, 20 years, but, you know, London plane trees, which are the sycamores, are well beyond that in height when they're mature. So I would imagine, I mean, our goal as owners is to get it as mature as possible out of the gates, on both sides.
Thank you. And just the existing house that's there on the site, is that roughly in the same location as the 2-story?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And
Okay.
that I can show you on the floor plan? Or?
Oh, I don't need it. I just am trying to, I went and visited the site again, trying to, get the neighborhood compatibility and visualize the difference between what's existing there and what you're proposing. My last question is, did you consider dropping the plate heights on that garage? You've got a ridge of 18 feet and an eave of 9'6" right at the front setback.
We looked at the size of the garage doors and having for it to read right, and also it's to have enough space for storage up above in the garage.
Thank you.
Got a couple quick ones here. happy to see the sandstone and so the limestone. We've got plenty of sandstone around here, and it will help anchor this to the place that it's growing out of. I like that. Do you have a paver selected? Do we have pavers selected? Or are you proposing those as part of, would that be part of your final presentation?
We do have it in the palette. We don't have a color of it, but we're proposing colored concrete that will match the Santa Barbara sandstone.
Okay, so you can do that with the concrete. You don't need a permeable situation out there in terms of your paving. You're going to be able to meet, okay. And then I know there was much.
Let me backtrack on that
Yeah.
1 minute. Right, the driveway is a permeable cobble, and that is
Okay.
part of our grading and drainage now.
Okay.
So that, what is the name of that? And it's a very nice looking cobble that is right, yeah, basically. But around the pool and let's say immediately outside the front door, the landings and things like that will be the colored concrete.
Okay, and will those be a gray, a buff, generally speaking?
It'll match. Schlegel will match the Santa Barbara sandstone
Okay, great.
color. Yeah.
And then, I don't want to go backwards, but I know there was a lot of conversations about the front big stair window, and there were also conversations about the octagonal structure in the back, and I think we got beyond that. Can I see the front elevations? You had a comparative study of the front elevation, or maybe it was the rear elevation, and it looks like there was a fenestration change, and I'm just trying to understand that. Like maybe there was one big window and it's now been broken up into two more medium-sized windows
Is
that are.
that the conservatory in back or the front there or?
I don't know, you zoomed through those pretty quickly, so I'm.
Okay.
It might be this elevation.
That.
Yeah, there it is. It's the one-story volume, and it looks like you used to have one large window there on the south elevation.
This?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And you've broken that up.
Right.
Okay.
Into French.
Okay. Are there any other changes that have been made to the architecture that you may have overlooked pointing out to us?
Since the last presentation, no.
Okay.
But I believe, just to clarify, I believe that change was made for the last single-family design board
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
So that didn't change since the last meeting that we had here, but we had 3 concept reviews, and that was a change made from the second to the third.
The chimney caps did change. The chimney material and the chimney cap did change.
Okay. So what we're seeing on the bottom of this sheet was the original.
Very first.
Okay, so it's not comparing it to the last iteration, but rather to the original iteration that came before the board.
That is correct.
Okay, that's helpful. Those are my only questions. Any comments from the board?
Mine are just generally very positive. I think it's really beautiful. I think it is in line with the other heights. I think you do a good job on the second floor of lowering the roof line by the windows to keep a smaller appearance. And really the height that appears a little bit taller than the neighboring buildings is just the ridge line, and it's just a small portion of it. I think the improvements that were made on the glazing work really well, and I think the materials and the palette overall is very, very nice.
Ms. Sherry, do you have any comments?
My comment is I think the project's ready for project design approval, and I'm ready to make a motion.
Ms. Anderson, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful home. It's going to be amazing, and quality of materials are top notch. For me, I just still feel like it's slightly too large for compatibility with the neighborhood. The historic homes that you show are on big pieces of property. I don't know if I need to go through my other reasoning around, there's no ADU proposed in your FAR. And it just, the feel in that existing neighborhood for me is slightly too large.
Okay.
Could I respond to that comment?
No, it's the board's time. Sorry.
I wasn't sure since we had extra time when we could use that. Thank you.
So I think the project's great. I'm happy to see the change to the sandstone. I think it's ready for PDA also. I can appreciate your struggle with the size of it. When I first went out to this property last year to look at it, I came in from sort of the west, and I went, wow, that's a big that's a big, tall something compared to everything that's sort of to the west of it. Today I came in from the east, and you have sort of that row of those like 1970s, the north side of the old, I'm going to say the Beach Boy property, but yeah. And so in that context, this doesn't feel as tall to me as I was concerned about before. And I kind of go back to the conversation that we had on the board last year, which is it's a really unique parcel for the neighborhood. Most of the parcels are much narrower, and you don't have opportunities like this. And every once in a while, we can do something sort of Disneyland-y in town where we sort of create a history of something that appears to have come before that really didn't. And I think this is a perfect example of that situation. So I agree. I think it's ready for project design approval, and I am happy to have anybody make a motion in that regard.
Chair Colas, board members, in making the motion, please consider forwarding this project on to the consent agenda for final approval. Thank you.
You were reading my mind. I'd like to make a motion for project design approval with the project to return for final approval on consent, and making neighborhood preservation ordinance findings. The project is consistent with the scenic character of the city and will enhance the appearance of the neighborhood. The development will be compatible with the neighborhood, and its size, bulk, and scale will be appropriate to the site and neighborhood. The development, including proposed structures and grading, is designed with quality architectural details and quality materials, and will maintain the natural appearance of the ridgeline or hillside. The proposed project will not remove or significantly impact any designated specimen, historic, or landmark trees, and to the maximum extent feasible, preserves and protects healthy, non-invasive mature trees with a minimum trunk diameter of 4 inches. I have to read this whole thing, right? Measured 4 feet above natural grade. The project includes a plan to mitigate the impact of the removal of any healthy, non-invasive mature tree with a diameter of 4 inches or more at 4 feet above natural grade in compliance with applicable tree replacement ratios. The public health, safety, and welfare will be protected, and the project generally complies with applicable privacy, landscaping, noise, and lighting good neighbor guidelines. The development, including proposed structures and grading, will preserve any existing significant public scenic views of and from the hillside. In addition to those findings, we are making hillside findings and grading findings, and I believe those are the same, these two. They're one list, too. The development, including proposed structures and grading, is appropriate to the site, is designed to avoid visual scarring, and will not significantly modify the natural topography of the site or the natural appearance of any ridgeline or hillside. And the development, including proposed structures and grading, will maintain a scale and form that blends with the hillside area by minimizing the visual appearance of structures and the overall height of the structure.
Can you also just state you found the grading findings as well?
And did I miss those? I thought I just read that, appropriate grading protection. Oh, where's the grading findings?
So we read the hillside design and slope lot findings, and then if you can just note for the record, the grading findings shown on the screen as well, that the project.
The grading findings have met as stated in section 22.69.030 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code. The proposed grading will not significantly increase siltation in or decrease the water quality of streams, drainages, or water storage facilities to which the property drains, and the proposed grading will not cause a substantial loss of southern oak woodland habitat.
I'll second that motion, and I'd like to make a request of the maker of the motion that we add a request that when the applicant returns for final, that they have the specification and colors for the cobble paving, and that there also be a landscape lighting plan, if we don't have it already, that demonstrates what will hopefully be very minimal lighting on the project. if
I'm
that's
okay with
acceptable.
that addition. Did you get that all? Okay.
Okay, and so then I'll resecond the motion, and if we can take a vote, please.
All right, Chair Kalas?
Yes?
Vice Chair Anderson?
No.
Board Member Lewis?
Yes.
Board Member Sherry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Chair Kalas, through you to Board Member Anderson, if you could just state your reasonings for the no vote, please.
The scale and the massing are too large for the 20 closest homes in regards to neighborhood compatibility without an ADU.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day. Okay, so now, last but not least, item 5, thank you for your patience. 1553 Shoreline Drive. This is a proposal to construct this is agendized for a one-time pre-application consultation. This is a proposal to construct a two-story, 4,428 square foot, single-unit residence, a 489 square foot attached garage, and a 489 square foot accessory unit, dwelling unit, on a vacant parcel located in the coastal zone appeals jurisdiction and in the Hillside Design District. The project will require 2 coastal development permits. The ADU is not within our purview, and the proposed total of 4,917 square feet of development on a 23,333 square foot lot is 104% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. This is a one-time pre-application consultation review. No final appealable decision will take place. Neighborhood preservation findings, Hillside Design District slope lot findings will be required when and if the project is reviewed for project design approval. I added that. If you would both be so kind as to introduce yourselves for the record and your project, please.
My name's Tom Oxner, project architect.
No, I think that's on, Tom.
There we go.
And
Tom
Trish-
Oxner, project architect.
And Trish Allen with SEPS, and hopefully we'll have our landscape architect, who's
And Chair Kolas, if I could make some comments before the applicant team gets started.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So as you read, this is a pre-application concept review, so we're looking for feedback on broad issues at this time, such as site planning, the project's relationship to its site and the neighborhood, general architectural style, size, bulk, and scale. If there's any information you would like to have that you don't see in this package, you can request that for next time. And then I wanted to point out a couple of things just to help focus your review on this project. As stated, there is an ADU associated with it. You'll see that on the plans. It's not within your purview to comment on because it does comply with all applicable ministerial requirements. The applicant has chosen to keep it on the plans. They didn't have to do that. They could bring it in separately. However, this project will be going to Planning Commission for a coastal development permit, so it makes more sense in that regard to keep it together. It's a little muddier for this board, unfortunately, especially in terms of floor area ratio, so I want to talk about that a little bit. The site is over 15,000 square feet in area. So from a zoning perspective, floor area ratio does not apply to the site, doesn't apply to the project. There's no situation where we would require a floor area modification, regardless of what the floor area is. In this case, you'll see on the cover sheet there that we have provided, or the applicant has provided FAR calcs for the single-family residence alone, and then a separate calc for that includes the ADU. So you can see how that affects the overall FAR. So for this project, FAR really is just a tool for you to use in your review of the project, most directly in compatibility findings. But staff doesn't want you to get too hung up on FAR numbers. This is a large lot. It's constrained. It's a bluff top lot, so they have that 50-foot bluff top setback. We really want you to look at size, bulk, and scale. Maybe there are other tools or other ways you can look at it. FAR may not be the best tool in this case. It's one of your tools, but we just kind of want to clarify that for you starting out. And if you have further questions on any of those topics, I'm here to answer them.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So to be clear, this is a guideline FAR. It's not a required FAR. And because we're over 100%, if it were required, that would trigger a higher level of review. But because it's guideline, it does not.
If it's a little complicated, if this site was less than 1,500 square feet,
15,000, yeah.
15,000 square feet, thank
Yeah.
you.
It would be required, FAR.
The special ADU is a whole nother subject. We cannot limit FAR. We cannot require an FAR modification if a special ADU is bumping it over 100%. So that is not the situation in this case, but there are more complicated sites.
And this is a special ADU because it's hillside, is that correct?
I don't know why it's a special ADU. It's this.
Oh, I can answer some of these.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, please.
Look at you, just in time.
So if we could just get clarification on that, and then we'll let you go ahead and make your presentation. I apologize for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've spent some time in the code as it relates to special ADUs in the coastal zone with this lot size. And I feel for staff and the decision makers having to navigate through all this stuff. I thought I had it clear. So a special ADU in this case it's the size. There's several things that contribute to or allow it to be categorized in that way. It's detached. It's less than 800 square feet. It's single story. So those things constitute a special ADU. The state law and city code both indicate that there's no limitation of that ADU for a FAR limitation, where an FAR limitation would apply. However, this lot size being greater than the 15,000 square feet, it's sort of a moot point, if you will. It doesn't matter. If the lot was 15,000 or less, and the combined, even if the combined floor area of the residence and the ADU was more than 100% of an FAR, the project still would not require an FAR modification because of the state statute, how it deals with it. So having said all that, we felt a couple of things were really important to us as we move forward with this project. Number one, coming to this board early, very conceptual. All y'all that, process through the city understand what's involved with a PLN application finding. And so more and more, I think we're finding, just a benefit coming to whichever design board applies and getting your feedback early on. What else do you need to see? We understand this, your purview with neighborhood compatibility. So that's very important to us. It is a bluff top lot. It's vacant. It requires a coastal development permit. The ADU itself also requires a coastal development permit. I believe our intent, and Tom can kick me if I'm wrong, is to combine the development. There are options for applicants to separate these things. If you've ever done it, it's a nightmare. And it's double work. The expense is great. It's my recommendation to combine. And then as a technical matter, the ADU meets the objective criteria for the design. So it's not that we, anyway,
It's
that's,
okay.
that's
The
all the
reason,
background
the reason for
it's
my
on
question
there.
is we had this lengthy training a couple of weeks ago, and special ADUs were discussed much more extensively as it relates to high fire zones.
Okay.
So that's why I was asking the question about a
should've come to the
special
tra-
ADU. So,
I could have used some training.
Chair
Thank you.
Colossus, there's,
Yeah.
if I may, there's one more correction I wanted to make. The project description says that the project would require 2 coastal development permits. If they separated the ADU onto a separate project, then it would require 2 coastal development permits. If they keep them together and take it to PC together, it would just be 1, which is a lot of
benefit for everybody.
Yeah, so
Understood.
that's, unfortunately, it's a little muddier for SFDB in that case, but.
I think we're
that's-
capable. I think we
Okay,
can
I
keep
do
our
too.
blinders on when it comes to the
I believe in
ADU.
you.
So, okay, with all of that being said, can we reset the clock for the applicant? And
We're a minute over. We'll just
that's, yeah, we can just add a minute, 40 seconds to your presentation. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll go through the architecture, and then we've got Courtney to go through the landscape architecture. So this property has been before your board a few times. There have been a few homes designed on it recently. It's the vacant lot right where Loyola comes down and runs into Shoreline. Recently, there was a contemporary home here on the, okay, on the east side, there was a contemporary home designed, and it was recently finished. And then on the west side, there's a one-story home, and these are shots that look all the way around it. And as you can see, there's an oak tree right here in slide 2, and then there's an aerial also. This slide shows some images looking down from Loyola as you approach the site. So there was a time when there was some concern about the view coming down Loyola, and if you look closely at the, there we go. You can see the,
I'm right there with you, Mr. Oxner.
I've
I
got-
totally understand
Yeah.
the technical struggles
Yeah,
of the
maybe Courtney can
electronic
help me.
world.
Can you really do that? Okay. So, yes, so these are shots looking down, and so these are actually old shots here, but I think we get the idea. Okay, got it. Okay. We got a lot of photos, so we're going to move. So this slide here is really just kind of a compilation of the 2-story homes on Shoreline and somewhat in the immediate area. We've got sort of a trend here of the massing kind of being pushed to the front of the property. We've got typically a variety of styles. You can see we've got Mediterranean, some contemporary, some hybrids. If we look at this aerial photo down here, there's our vacant lot. You can see how it lines up with Loyola. And then the property to the right, the 2 properties on either side are about 80 foot in width. And they're comparable sizes. They're over 22,000 square feet. So the basic survey of the site, features this single tree here. It's an oak tree. There's a street tree out here, which is right where we want the driveway to be, so we're looking at relocating that. I think Courtney can speak to that. And then we have a bluff setback line that is somewhere in this vicinity here. So the previous two homes that were designed for this property featured a swimming pool on the south side. So because the program doesn't allow for that, we've looked at pushing the mass, the second-story mass, deeper into the property. What we've looked at doing here is to put a one-story garage and a one-story ADU up front with some room for landscaping and buffering, and then taking the bulk of the main residence and the second story and pulling it back deep into the site to give relief from the sidewalk, which is a little bit of a anomaly there on Shoreline. I may come back to that. So then this is the floor plan. The floor plan has the garage, the one-story garage in front, the one-story ADU, and then we've got the entry here, which is deep into the front, and then the primary great room, and then the south would have the covered loggia and the covered terraces that would provide the sun protection. The second story, as you can see, we've pulled the second story mass back from the front and we've set it back. This is where that oak tree is right here. This is the only mass that comes up relatively close to that west side, and then it steps back again. So our balcony here, it's not real deep, and it's 14 feet from the property line. This is the two-story contemporary home on the east side, and we've pushed the mass well back from them to respect the volume. They've got a tall 20-foot wall right about here, so we're trying to stay away from that. And then this is the roof plan. You can see a variety of gables and a little bit of quirky elements to kind of add some character to the house, but we've got predominantly gables and sheds. The Mediterranean style, I'll get to that when I go to the streetscape. So in terms of cross-section and height and plates, we're looking at sort of the typical thing in the area. We've got a 9-foot ceiling with a 1-foot-ish floor structure, and then 8-foot plates and possibly a 9-foot plate to accent the massing on the side. The overall height would be 25 feet, which is consistent with the homes in the neighborhood. And in terms of the architecture and massing, so the north elevation, you can see this is the garage in the foreground, and then the massing of the second story. The entry would be here. This does not show the ADU in front, but I've got that on the streetscape. The west elevation, the oak tree, you can see it's right here. And then this would be the only mass that comes up close to the setback, and then this mass is pushed back, and then there's the opening from the balcony. That's 14 feet from that property line. And then the south elevation is all about sun control. We've got deep, heavy sun control overhangs even on the second floor, so really there wouldn't be a lot of glare. This building is set well back from the bluff anyway. The setback is pretty significant. The east elevation, we've got the garage. This is a portico to go into the utility and laundry area. Bedrooms up top. This is the living room mass that is closest to the easterly property line, and then these are just openings into the covered indoor-outdoor loggia. And then in terms of the streetscape, so we've got, this is a Mediterranean home off to the west. It's 26 feet high. This home, I suspect, is in transition, but the primary goal of this is to show the sort of the massing. You've got this Mediterranean, this is 25 feet high. This is the contemporary home that offers a nice contrast, but what this house really will offer is sort of that volume, especially when this lines up with Loyola. We've got the ADU and the one-story garage, so from a pedestrian perspective and from an intersection perspective, I think it will add to the volume of that area down there without crowding your typical two-story house up against the front yard setback. And I think the style works its way in with the variety that exists on Shoreline. So I think that's kind of it. Let me see, let's look for the landscape.
They're in there.
Oh, it just keeps going, yeah. We'll switch seats.
Okay, did you close them? Okay, hi, Courtney Jane Miller, landscape architect, CJMLA. It's nice to see some new faces. So yeah, as Tom mentioned, I think in terms of the landscape, we have pretty simple plan. Oops, the blue squares. We have one existing tree within the parkway here. It's a coral tree, and I think it's in decline. It looks pretty horrible. So we're planning on removing that and replacing with a new street tree somewhere in this area. We're working with the Parks Department on the species. And in terms of the front, or how we've organized the property, we have what we're calling the arrival garden along the front, that fronts shoreline, and then we have the bluff side garden along the back here. So two slightly different strategies in terms of the design. We have in the front garden, we have sort of a little courtyard happening here. It's the plan is that it's open to the street. Gosh, those squares. Our clients didn't want to have a barrier, so we don't have a fence or a wall along the front, and instead what we have is sort of a tiered vegetative screening happening there. So we have some different ideas about what that could be specifically, but the idea is that it would be kind of an informal, loose. They like that very informal, native, I don't know what else to call it, look. So we're going to be doing that along the front here. We have a number of different trees proposed. We're looking at lots of food-bearing trees, so citrus, avocado, canopy trees, probably a jacaranda. And then most of the species along the front will be more ornamental in character, mixed with some natives. And along the back, a little different strategy here. So in keeping with the coastal land use policy, I think the idea here is to really have a light touch. So the idea is to have a few seating areas, some really minimal pathways, so that's this kind of wiggly path, and then one kind of main route from a rear terrace out to the bluff. The materials we're looking at are intended to be minimal, lightweight. For this one, we're thinking of maybe a timber or something that's, like I said, lightweight, doesn't require a heavy footing. And then for the other paths, we're looking at potentially gravel or even, what do we call it? We do these paths that are sort of like rammed earth almost. They're just a little bit firmer than just dirt. And then everything within this area will be native species. The intent is that over time, the irrigation will get turned off, so we're not introducing more water or weight on the bluff top. And then we do need to have a safety fence along the bluff edge here. So that's indicated with this line with the little circles. Because of how the bluff topography is in this area, it is quite steep. It's pretty flat, and then it really, goes almost straight down. So we're looking at hopefully a little bit taller fence, like a 5-foot or even a 6-foot, just so that we can protect that edge from, dogs, children, et cetera, from going over. And we're trying to get that down low enough so it doesn't impact the views. So that's always the balance with these properties. And then we have some strategic medium, smallish trees along the edges here that are intended to help kind of frame the view. And then I'm sure we're out of time, so I think I'll just leave it at that and happy to answer any questions.
We have 4 minutes on the clock left over.
Oh, 4 minutes. Do we want to?
And 40.
So this is sort of the style that we're going for with the landscape design. And we're looking at potentially a cobble for the driveway, but the materials are still very much in development, so. Okay, that concludes our presentation unless Tom has anything else. Okay.
I think we got it.
Do you want me to keep driving?
Okay. Great. So we will close the applicant's presentation period, and we will open public comment for this item. If there's anybody in the audience or online that would like to speak to this item, can raise your hand.
All right, thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. So just as a reminder, if anyone wishes to speak, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. And seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. So if you wish to speak on Zoom, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and then I will call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any written correspondence. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Okay, great. So now's the time for the board to ask questions. Ms. Lewis, I'm going to start with you.
No questions.
Questions, okay. Ms. Sherry, any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Graffiti?
Two quick questions. One for staff. I know we talked on an earlier item for final approval, mailers don't go out. I'm curious, at this stage, are mailers sent out to the immediate vicinity?
Chair Claus, through you to Board Member Graffiti, yes, this project was noticed with a mailed postcard.
And then just one thing I wanted to confirm, I think you clarified it when you walked through the projects, but the top of Ridge, I think you noted at around 25 feet, and then there was a neighboring project with the chimney ended at 26, if you could just scroll right past and I couldn't tell, is that like slightly higher? Are those accurate to your best ability of confirming heights?
That's my project also, so.
Okay.
I can confirm that it was 26 feet to the ridge.
Okay.
Of the gable, that's not quite on the screen.
Okay. Great. Thank you. That's my only question.
Okay, Ms. Anderson, any questions?
Yeah, I was just curious on the ADU in the garage plate heights.
Okay, the elevations.
I also want to be careful discussing the ADU in this meeting, so maybe just the garage is appropriate.
But they're 9 feet to kind of match the garage.
And then I'm like, the residents to, I believe, the east or the right, that the contemporary that you've aligned so well on the site, that any estimate on height of, I think there's the second floor and the chimney that are.
So that I also know well, and it's 20 feet to the top of the parapet. So that dark metal roof that you see there to the left, that's 20 feet, and then it has a large chimney mass that extends up, in the 23-foot range. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess this is a question. Did you consider, I'm low blood sugar. Did you consider a hipped roof for this house? I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is I really like the fact that you put the lower one-story elements out front, and I'm just thinking that if those had a hipped roof, that it would bring down that massing even a little bit more from shoreline. So that's why I'm asking the question.
That's really an interesting question because I loved hipped roofs, and the reason I love hipped roofs is because I'm always fighting solar, and I'm always fighting massing sizes, and because of the size of the property here, I found it was kind of a joy to work with some gables. But yes, I typically do like hip roofs, and they tend to be a little bit more gentle to a neighborhood.
That was my only question. So again, I'm just going to remind the board that we're really talking about siting, as in SITING, site planning, size, bulk, and scale, relationship with neighbors, and supplemental application materials that we might think that we need if the applicant were to pursue the project. Does anybody have any comments?
I'll go first with comments. I think it's really lovely, and I think the siding is great in the stepping back, and the approach coming in. I think it works really well. I have no issue with the height, and I think the size and bulk of it works. It works very nicely. I think in conjunction with the other properties and neighbors. I think the materials work well with the neighborhood as well. And I think the landscaping plan in the back is very nice. We haven't heard from any neighbors, but obviously moving forward, I think especially that kind of back patio deck area, if there's any neighborhood concerns, something we might look at. But otherwise, I think you're in a really good direction.
Ms. Sherry?
I agree with the comments that were made, and I actually, in this case, I hear what you're saying, Leslie, about the hip roof. In this case, I like the gable because I'm seeing this as a Spanish colonial revival type house, and the combination of different types of roofs, and I like the gable facing the street. In this case, I actually like it. I think it's very Santa Barbara.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Overall, I know, again, we're in early stages. I think it's a great project. Yeah, I mean, I think the two-story element, to me, I'm supportive of. I mean, the style, again, Mesa's very eclectic, but this style also blends well, and there's other, two stories in the near vicinity with the Mediterranean style that I think would be very compatible and blend well with. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the overall kind of size, bulk, and scale. I also think I'm excited about the landscaping plan. I think that'll be beautiful in the front and from the bluff side. And I'm excited to see something there, especially, I mean, there's been that development. It sounds like you're kind of working on all of them, but on the right, that's been developed for a very long time. And then on the left, that's overturned a few years. And I think that this is really going to balance that one on the left with the modern roof facing the street very well. So, yeah, those are my comments.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you for making our jobs easier. It's beautiful. I agree. I'm trying to keep timely. I agree with the comments made by the other board members.
See what happens when you wait that extra hour? We're all worn down. So just for the record, I actually really like gable roofs, but I just thought I'd ask the question in this case. I usually prefer a gable end, but I like the project. Now, whether I like the project or whether we can make findings for compatibility are two different things. It's a pretty big house, and I know there's a lot of pretty big houses in the neighborhood. I think it would be helpful to have some comparative square footage information for surrounding properties. I don't know that we need 20, but I'm thinking like at least maybe 2 or 3 flanking, maybe a couple across the street. And when we're talking square footage comparisons, I think the easiest way to do that would be to be comparing, because of the ADU issue, I'm trying to be reasonable here, is to be looking at primary residences and associated garages, I guess, is what I would be saying. So we'd be excluding the ADU from that comparison study. And I don't think you're going to have a problem showing compatibility, but I think it would be helpful for us as a board to have that information in order to be able to make that finding. I think it's a nice product. I really like the approach to the backyard landscaping. I really appreciate the fact that the neighbors don't feel the need to put up a big hedge or a big wall in the front, and that they're willing to let the landscape do that. It's refreshing with all the fences and walls that we're seeing go up lately. And it's nice to see something traditional being put up in the middle of, what is a lot of modern white and black residences these days. So I would completely support the project moving forward. I don't know what you want from us, because this is just a pre-application, so do you just want a
Yeah,
summary of
that's-
comments?
Yeah, if you want to do a summary, that's,
Okay. So I'll take a stab at that. So the board generally is in favor of the project. The board feels that it can support the size, bulk, and scale, but requests further square footage studies relative to at least the 3 flanking parcels on either side, and maybe a couple across the street. Those square footage studies would be exclusive of ADUs, but would include garages. And anything else that anybody else would like to see? Does anybody want to see silhouettes, or it'd be helpful to have, final heights on the elevation that we're looking at here? Anything else? I think that's it.
Well, thank you very much. I'll
Okay.
make sure I'm last on the agenda every time.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your patience today. Okay.
Can you switch over to mine?
No, there's no motion.
Thank you.
So with that, we will adjourn the Single Family Design Board meeting for May 6th of 2023. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.